April 15th, 2024 City Council meeting. Thank you all for joining us. We're going to start off with a roll call, please. Madam City Clerk.
Councilmember Brownrigg.
Here.
Councilmember Stevenson.
Here.
Councilmember Ortiz.
For the last time, yes.
Sorry, I didn't hear you. Councilmember Ortiz.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Beach. Here. Mayor Coulson.
Yes. And we're going to have a Pledge of Allegiance, and I would like to give that honor to my colleague, Mr. Councilman Ricardo Ortiz.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. All right. We have no request for AB 2449 remote participation. So that's item 4. Item 5, report out from closed session. We did not have a closed session. Upcoming events. Give me 1 second because did our staff send me anything? Margaret? Okay, I'm sorry. I've been busy all day. I haven't looked at my email. You're gonna have to forgive me. Let me look. In the meantime, does anyone on the council have any events they would like to talk about? Oh, I have a huge list from Margaret. Okay, I'll start in and you guys think. Calling All Teens, Board Games, and Boba is a no-fee teen event on Friday, May 3rd from 5 to 7 p.m. and you can RSVP through the Park and Rec. Number 2, the Muddy Mile is back on Saturday, April 27th at 9 a.m. Pre-registration is required. This is one of the highlight events for everyone. If you haven't been, you can go as an observer or a participant. Very fun. 3, we have a compost giveaway on Saturday, April 20th between 8 a.m. and 12 p.m. The pickup location is behind the Washington Park grandstands. Bring a shovel and up to 2 garbage cans per person. Number 4, the Lion King movie sing-along is on Friday, April 19th at 6 p.m. in the community center. The event has no fee, but pre-registration is required. Item 5, Ask a Lawyer, presented by Legal Aid Society of San Mateo County. Attorney Mark Cotter will answer our seniors' legal questions regarding elder rights issues on the second Friday of every month at the Burlingame Community Center. Call our number there at 650-558-7300 for a one-on-one appointment. Sunday, April 28th, drop-in quilting circle at the Burlingame Community Center Makerspace from 11 to 1 p.m. Open to all ages and no experience is necessary. I'm going to check and see if Brad sent me anything. Here he did. All right. Upcoming events for the library. What do we have here, Brad? Planting a garden with California natives. That is an upcoming event that will be Saturday, April 20th, 2024, 10 a.m. at the Tech Lab. You can go to the Burlingame Library website and you will be able to reserve a spot. It will start with a talk by Master Gardener Melissa Mason, followed by a hands-on demonstration at our garden plot that we will sheet mulch in the fall in Burlingame City Hall. So that sounds really good. It's part of our sustainable landscaping work. And we will be having our spring book sale with the Burlingame Library Foundation on April 18th to 21st. The hours vary by day, but you can just take a look right on the website and all that information. So those are the events that I have. Does anyone have any other additional events? Okay. All right, we will move on. Our first item of business is presentations. And we're skipping that tonight. We're not going to do it.
Very smart, Madeline.
Thank you. We're just going to pretend like it's not happening. This is a very, very sad, sad night for all of us sitting up here on the dais and everyone almost certainly in this room. We have the retirement of our over a decade serving amazing colleague, former mayor, two-time vice mayor, many-time councilman, Councilman Ricardo Ortiz. And we're going to celebrate right now a little bit about his service to the city. So I believe, Megan, this is the proclamation. So I'm going to start by reading the proclamation that the city has put together. Then I think what I'll do is open the mic up to all of my colleagues who have something to say. And
Boy, do we.
yeah, we have to limit it to a certain amount. And then we're going to open it up to the public. I think there are a number of members in the public who might be here tonight who have something to add on. And then I will go ahead and wrap up concluding remarks. So, proclamation. Oh, I can't make this bigger. I'm having a little problem here, Megan. All right, if I get stuck. All right. Proclamation honoring Ricardo Ortiz for his dedicated service to the Burlingame community. Whereas in 1993, Ricardo Ortiz and his wife Lauren moved to Burlingame, where he raised their 3 children, Augustine, Andres, and Veronica. And whereas Ricardo graduated from the University of California, San Diego with a degree in economics and has worked in banking for over 20 years. And whereas the Ortiz family has left and will continue to leave a lasting mark on Burlingame from their involvement in theater and sports to their dedication in bettering the community. Whereas over the past 20 years, Ricardo has volunteered with many Burlingame organizations and has served as the Burlingame Community for Education Treasurer, Burlingame School District Measure A Bond Oversight Committee Chair, Our Lady of Angels Men's Club President, Burlingame Rotary Club Treasurer, Burlingame AYSO Treasurer, and Burlingame High School Drama Boosters President. And I'm sure there's a few things missing in there, but that's a pretty darn good list. Whereas Ricardo was first elected to the City Council in 2013 and served as mayor in 2017 and 2022. And whereas as council member, Ricardo was a member and past chair of the Airport Land Use Committee, a member and past chair of the SFO Community Roundtable, a member and past chair of the Central County Fire Department, and a board member and past vice chair of the City County Association of Governments. And whereas Ricardo's institutional knowledge and ability to synthesize a subject in a few sentences for public understanding will be greatly missed. Whereas Ricardo's composure, steadiness, and wealth of knowledge has been a true beacon of light for the city and city council, and because he is always able to find common ground for the betterment of all. And whereas Ricardo's sense of humor, love of sports, even if it is Arsenal, and friendship will be missed by staff and his colleagues. And whereas Ricardo's uncanny ability to serve as mayor during the unveiling completion, this is my favorite one. Whereas Ricardo's uncanny ability to serve as mayor during the unveiling and completion of every single major project in Burlingame, where he then had his name listed at the very top. So it looks like he was actually just the only mayor we've ever had in Burlingame. Including the Broadway interchange overpass and the community center, is second to none. That is true. Now, therefore, the City Council of the City of Burlingame does hereby recognize Ricardo Ortiz and express its appreciation for his many years of service to the City of Burlingame. So before he says anything, I actually think there might be some other people in the audience who have some additional proclamations or awards. Maybe we should move to those next and then the council comment. Is that all right to take the formalities first? All right, step on up. We'll let everyone come up. Thank you.
Mayor Colson and council members and Councilmember Ortiz. I'm here on behalf of U.S. Representative Kevin Mullen to just offer some words of congratulations. Public service is a calling for some. It can be terribly frustrating at times, but the rewards that come from seeing your vision come to fruition, as Mayor Colson enumerated many of those, brings a lot of satisfaction. It also is a lot of sacrifice in terms of your personal time and spending time with family and loved ones. So it does take a lot, and it is very much appreciated that you gave more than a decade to this community, and I'm pretty sure you will continue to do so. So on behalf of Representative Kevin Mullen, I have just a small token of our appreciation, and thank you for your dedicated service. Reg.
When we're all, Dave, if you want, when we're all done, I can bring everybody down and we can do all the pictures. Is that all right? Does that work? You guys okay to stay here? Once we finish all the awards, I'll bring everybody down. We'll take all the photos, then we'll open it up to council and the members of the public for comment. Perfect. Linda, do you have, or Dave, or Nicole, are you next? Okay.
We're a double act.
Oh, fantastic.
Hi there, I'm Nicole Fernandez. I'm the district director for Senator Josh Becker.
And David Burrito, District Director for Assemblymember Diana Pappen.
We are so excited to be here today to celebrate Councilmember Ortiz. I was speaking to somebody today about you leaving the council and what an end of an era it is. And they said, the one thing that I love about Ricardo is that he's always the adult in the room with a sly sense of humor. So he always is going to offer a witty joke or something, but he has a great keen understanding and is always ready to build bridges. And that's something that I really appreciate about Councilmember Ortiz. On behalf of Senator Becker, I hope you really enjoy all of the time that you now get to spend with your family, and thank you for your service to Burlingame.
I got a little double duty speaking on behalf of the Assembly member, but also as a Burlingame constituent. I think I'm in your district. I live.
Oh, that's ignorant.
So I just wanted to say personally on behalf of the Assembly members, thank you for your decade of service. Burlingame has really blossomed under your very steady leadership. And that's really been a hallmark, I think, of this council in general, is very stable, very forward thinking. You can disagree without being disagreeable. We don't really have to worry about you in the newspaper. It's really been lovely to see, actually, and it's a sense of pride for our community. So really want to say thank you. And as a constituent, I know I've actually called you a few times over the years to say, hey, what's going on with this man? What's happening? And you showed a lot of patience in explaining the what and the how and the why. And I've always really appreciated that. But on a personal level and also as part of my public duty, I just want to say thank you for your service. And I know you've been treasurer for every organization in town. So I'm assuming you're still going to be around a little bit. We have a little gift for you. So we're all going to be decorating your walls. So we'll do it after.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get everybody at once. Perfect.
But thank you very much.
Thank you. David. Oh. Yeah, Linda, please, supervisors, Board of Supervisor Representative.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Linda Wolin. I'm Chief of Staff for Supervisor Dave Pine. And Supervisor Pine really wanted to be here personally tonight, but he is a bit under the weather and don't do that. So I'm here representing him and myself, and also on behalf of the entire Board of Supervisors of the County of San Mateo to thank you so much for your service. We all brought resolutions outlining many of the things Mayor Colson already outlined, but on a personal note for myself and Supervisor Pine, we really want to thank you for your service on the San Francisco Airport Community Roundtable, which you served very ably as Burlingame's representative for many years as chair, vice chair, chair of subcommittees, really a worker bee in a committee that's very hard. There's a really steep learning curve, and it's hard for new members to figure out what's going on for a year or two, and yet you stayed for many years and were able to contribute so ably and get a few things done at the margin. So you know what I'm talking about.
We moved the needle.
We moved the needle, and we're very proud of that, and we really appreciate your service. And then on a personal note, it's been just a delight and an honor to work with you as a friend. We'll miss you in that capacity. I know I'll see you elsewise. So thank you so much for your service.
Thank you.
Wait. is there any more? I think that's it in terms of awards. Okay, let's come on down and we'll take the pictures with everybody and all of the staff first, and then
All
we'll
of
come back
these?
up and do the roast. Hold them. Yeah, let's just do that really quick. So if they need to leave,
Yeah.
they can.
We have the cameras over that way, so if you all could turn around. Right here, Jeremy and. I'm gonna let the camera this way.
Oh, we'll go.
No photo bombing with.
One, two, three. One, two. Thank you.
I know.
So I'm going to go ahead and, is it all right? Would colleagues like to say a few comments? Yes, I can start with Peter while you're getting ready. Councilman Stevenson, please.
So part of my excitement of joining the council and making that decision was because I knew a lot of the folks, and in particular, Ricardo, for a very long time. And I've been aware of all the efforts he's done, both in conjunction with my own involvement in different things over the years, but also from a city council standpoint, as mayor, as vice mayor, and so forth. So the great news is I feel like, well, okay, I didn't get to spend as much time with him on the dais, so to speak. But in the short time I've been here, I've already learned a great deal. But I think more importantly, you're just going to be a friend, and you've been a friend for 30 years, and you'll continue to be a friend for the next 30 years. And I look forward to that.
Thank you, Peter. Same here.
Yes, Vice Mayor Beach, please.
Thank you, Peter. No, I just want to say, Ricardo, thanks for always stepping up. You've done that throughout the community as a volunteer in a million different ways in the way that the mayor outlined, but thank you for stepping up to serve on city council. Somebody's got to do it. It's really important work. And thank you for doing it for as long as you did.
Thank you.
Councilman Brownrigg, please.
Okay, you're not keeping me to remarks that short.
No, you can go as.
So
long-
first of all,
Time for you.
just for the record, I'm wearing a tie for the banker.
Who didn't wear a tie?
This is, I think, the first time in at least 10 years I've worn a tie to city council, certainly before COVID. And it has been 10 years that I've worked with Ricardo, which is longer than I've held most of my jobs. And it's been a job working with Ricardo, but a good one. So to me, because I care a lot about public policy and making a city work, Ricardo has been a dream of a colleague. So what I find about Ricardo is that he does what is so hard to do when you come into a difficult issue, is that he has an open mind. But once he listens and he processes and he reads, he then comes to a conclusion, and it's pretty unwavering. And that's actually really hard to do, to be open-minded and then to be convicted. What's not helpful are people who make up their minds and then change their minds, and then they change it again, and then someone talks to them and they change it again. That's not someone you can work with. So I really appreciate that. I have noticed that Ricardo likes winning. He does have a great sense of humor. He likes teasing. But Ricardo has never been mean. He's never held grudges, and he doesn't like bullies. And I don't either. I appreciate that. Ricardo is somebody who, in my mind, encapsulates what makes a healthy public body, which is he brings common sense and common decency to every conversation. And that's all we can hope for. He also never has raised his voice, I think, in the 10 years that I've watched him be mayor or on the council. And yet everyone listens extremely carefully to what Ricardo has to say. And I think that's a mark of somebody who weighs their words carefully, and then they are really valuable when you listen. Now, has he been a good legislator? I went back and looked at the first interview he gave after being elected, And he said this was days after the election, and he said there were two things he wanted to do. He wanted to get this husk of a building called Sunrise built and occupied. Check.
Done it.
And he wanted to, he said, this is like really kind of uncanny. He said he thought there should be more parking downtown, maybe in a structure, maybe paid for by a developer. I thought, holy cow.
I thought that was your idea.
Well, maybe it was our idea, but it worked. You know, we have done a lot in the 10 years. We have gotten through a budget collapse in which for a city that spends $75 million on its general fund, so police and parks and, you know, sidewalk repair and libraries, a $75 million budget went to $55 million in the first full year of COVID. We lost $20 million. And it was thanks to this council, but to Ricardo has always had his eye on the bottom line for the city of Burlingame. And that's what allowed us to get through that collapse without cutting any positions, without closing libraries, without furloughs. We have done amazing things. We have a roundabout, thanks to Ricardo. We have,
Blame that on him. That's a good idea.
now I'm not going to lay the but we have affordable housing. We have a town square that's almost done. We have a community center that's been built. It's been an amazing 10 years, and I really have valued every minute up here and in all the inevitable side chambers and so forth that I've been able to work with Ricardo. So I feel it's a blessing for me. There are two, probably more, but at least two things I know are undone. And so my promise to you is to get them done. One is there's a fence on El Camino Real. We'll get that done. And the second, we're one of the few places where Ricardo and I came up short over the last 10 years is a bike lane north of Broadway to BART. And we'll see if we can wrestle some of that land away from PUC or whoever the hell owns it and get that done. But I really wanted to thank you, Ricardo, from the bottom of my heart for your service to the city and your service up here to all of us. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So my ode to Ricardo will be a little more about our kind of just time that we've known each other over the years. I also do want to recognize that Ricardo is the first Latino mayor that has ever served in Burlingame. And that's a huge important deal. And the sort of diversity, the diverse perspective you brought as from a family who immigrated to this country, I think you've always kept, you've so beautifully kept every single person in mind in this city, regardless of whether they were born here or not born here, regardless of their socioeconomic or the color of their skin. You've been such an inclusive leader, Ricardo. I first met Ricardo 20 years ago, and we volunteered for BCE, and he was a treasurer, and I was working on the dinner dance. And all I have to say is I was like incredibly happy there was a capable person at the helm on treasury. You were amazing. You set up a great budget. You helped us do everything, and it was my first opportunity to work with you. And I didn't know how deep and long our friendship and our collegial work would go, but it was your passion for our community that really struck me as something that I knew I wanted to be more involved and friends with you and your beautiful wife, Lauren. We ended up also then serving together for 2 years on the Burlingame School District Oversight Committee, and I knew you were the kind of person I wanted to work with when you weren't afraid to call something that wasn't proper something bad. And you called it out and you stood up and you did what needed to be done. And I, to this day, I'm so grateful for that. Shortly thereafter, working together, Ricardo came to me with a proposal that he was going to run for the Burlingame City Council and wanted me to take a lawn sign. I didn't realize that when you take one, it like opens the flood house. So my house has always now had lots and lots of lawn signs, and it's because you were the first one. And I was kind of like, how could I say no to someone who is so capable and, such a contributor community? So of course I took it. It was a pleasure to support him in his race and every race he's ever run. And I've always endorsed him, and he's always been a person I've thought would be amazing on the council. And I was happy to let somebody else do the very heavy lifting of working on the council. It made me think I never was going to have to do that. And never did I imagine that we would be serving together for almost 9 years. In those 9 years, his devotion and love for his community have become apparent. Everyone here knows that. He has never missed a meeting unless he was sick. Oh, I think there was one time when maybe Colombia was playing in the World Cup. And so we gave him a pass on that. All covered for him. Where's Ricardo? I think Colombia is in the World Cup. You're excused. It has been my great pleasure to be paired up with Ricardo on many important projects. My favorite one was working with him on Top Golf negotiations, and now here 9 years later, we'll be opening that in the fall. He was such a you were such a savvy negotiator. You just understood all the numbers and everything, and you know, I don't know if people realize this. They came in and offered us 500,000. Ricardo, after working on the negotiation, we turned him into $1.5 million a year. So that changed what was going to come to the city over maybe the course of 40 years by, let's call it $40 million to $50 million. So I think you earned your keep. Outside of city council, it's been wonderful to know Ricardo and his beautiful wife, Lauren, who I want to acknowledge sitting in the audience. It's never easy to be a spouse in these arrangements. There's a lot of late nights, a lot of trips, a lot of meetings, and a lot of stress, frankly. And without a wonderful partner in Lauren and an understanding family, none of us can be that successful. Eric and I have enjoyed and treasured our friendship with the Ortiz family. We've hired their kids. We've worked with them on so many ways. And we look forward to many more happy memories. On a side note, our children are the same age. And I think it was it Augustine or Andre? Who walked down the aisle with Grace? Agu. So even when it came to BIS, guess out of 800 kids, guess whose 2 kids got paired up to walk together down the graduation aisle? It was the Ortiz and Golson family. So I have lots and lots of pictures and happy memories with both our families. I'm going to miss Ricardo's amazing doodles. I don't know if people know that about Ricardo, but he sits up here and draws these like fabulous doodles, mostly of the people speaking. And I think that's kind of how he processes a lot of the work he's doing. He doodles. I look over. Is it a frowny face? Is it a happy face? Does it have a finger sticking up its nose? What's going on over in Ricardo's doodles? And I kind of get a sense about what's going on with Ricardo. And I think that just plays into his very wry sense of humor and his also sensibility. He always knows how to get to the point. Don't draw me. I know you're doing that right now.
And it's with a big.
Mean face. And when enough is enough, he knows when to call for the vote. I've always appreciated that about him. He's the counter to my wordiness. He's the pithy one. Ricardo's contributions to our city are easy to see everywhere you look, mostly because somehow, like we mentioned earlier, he got into the perfect rotation. So Mayor Ricardo Ortiz is on like every plaque in Burlingame. And you know what? I think we would all have to agree if it had to happen to anyone, you're the one we'd want on there. The beautiful community center, the Broadway overpass, many new parks, a gorgeous downtown, welcoming new housing. He really did it all. And I will never forget his birthday, because the other thing Ricardo and I have in common is we share December 24th, Christmas Eve as our birthdays. Yeah, he's older, by the way, just so you all know. I'm the younger one. So with that, I'll conclude my remarks because we'll have many more opportunities for laughter and good times. I'm going to miss you, my dear friend, here on the council, but I know you are looking forward to more time with your beautiful wife and your family. And on behalf of everyone, I wish you the best. You deserve it.
Thank you.
Pardon? Public comment? Am I? Yes, of course Lisa can say something.
Before we go to public comment, I
didn't prepare anything. I didn't have a nice long speech like Mayor Coulson had, but I just wanted to thank you on behalf of the staff. It is not always easy to be in these chairs here, working for 5 bosses, and you all are lovely people, but sometimes you don't all do lovely things, and we really appreciate you. But what I appreciate so much about you, Ricardo, is that, sorry, Councilmember Ortiz, is that you always could find that middle ground and figure out a way to get people to agree on a path forward. And we're not Stepford wives here. We don't have 5-0 votes on everything.
Yeah.
Which we shouldn't. That's not the way you want to run a city. You want a little healthy conflict now and again. But I really appreciated the way that you could find a path forward through whatever the contentious issue was. I think your very first meeting was when we were doing food trucks, if I recall correctly, and that was a bit of a mess.
Was a tough one.
That was a tough one. And yet you came back the next meeting and you kept coming back and you kept lending this very thoughtful approach to everything that happened on the dais. And so on behalf of the staff, I really appreciate that. And thank you so much. On a personal level, you know how much I adore you. I will miss our lunches. I'll miss hanging with my dog and you at lunch. You're very nice to Kiki. She loves you as well. And just getting that phone call after a council meeting, Ms. Goldman, let's talk about what happened last night. And it was just, you're always just a joy to be around. We talked about council, we talked about musical theater, we talked about travel, we talked about our dogs, we talked about all sorts of fun things that were not all work related. And that is the mark of a friendship, not just a boss-employee relationship. So thank you so much. I will really, really, really miss having the opportunity to work with you, but I hope that we will still get to go out to lunch with Kiki now and again.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I miss Kiki.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're going to get something that glowing.
I want to go ahead and take a moment and open it up to members of the public. I see a lot of faces here that I think have known and worked with Ricardo over the years. So I see Mark, are you looking to come up? Why don't you go ahead and start us off?
Oh, God help us.
Yeah, I know. I'll keep it short. Distinguished council, Madam Mayor, I'll direct my comments to Ricardo.
Please.
And many of these comments have been made earlier, so bear with me. Ricardo, you were born in New York City, but at the age of 3 months, your parents moved back to Bogota, Colombia, where you grew up. You attended the American high school and learned to speak English. At the age of 18, your parents moved back to the States where you finished your senior year at San Mateo High School. After graduating from San Mateo High, you attended the College of San Mateo, where you met your future wife, Lauren. Upon leaving CSM, you transferred to UC San Diego, where you majored in economics, and that's pretty amazing, dude, okay? I had a lot of trouble with that class. Anyway, you've been in banking for over 20 years, with the most recent 10 years in Burlingame. I hope the numbers are close, but they're in the ballpark. After you and your wife, Lauren, along with your 2 daughters and son, have lived in Burlingame for over 20 years. In 2011, you ran for election. You got dusted. You went down.
That wasn't.
But you know what?
Yeah, no one brought.
You got back up. You got back up. And in 2013, you were elected to the city council and you served a couple of times as mayor of our city. You have done more than your share of volunteering and participating in local organizations, many that Mayor Coulson mentioned. Councilman Ricardo Ortiz, thank you for your service to the community. You, my friend, are a true success story, a true success story. I only wish the best to you and your wife, Lauren, and your children. Thank you for your service.
Next up.
Good evening, honorable council members. So when I first met Ricardo, he was running for office. And I said to Mike, I said, I'm going to go meet this guy. I didn't know him at all. And I think we were kind of tossing over the leaf blower issue. And that was in the days when I was walking down the street and people were calling me the leaf blower lady. So, so I sat down with Ricardo and the first thing I asked him was, what do you love? What do you love to do? And he said, I love hanging out at Burlingame High and supporting my kids in their theater program. And it knocked me over because, first of all, I love a parent who loves their kids, who just digs their kids. They like being around their kids, they like hanging out with their kids. But a guy who's accomplished, who can say a lot of things about what he's doing in the world, what he's volunteering for that sounds important with a capital I. And the first thing he wanted to talk about was his kids. So I said, okay, this is a guy of character. And then I caught his sense of humor and, you know, he was witty and funny and I love to laugh. So we were laughing and having a great time. And then we started talking about politics. And I came home from the meeting and I said to Mike, if he gets elected, he's going to be the most enthusiastic, genuine Democrat on the council. He's going to be in our little picket fence round of politics, right? And so we loved you for that. But then we got to know you as a human being, and we certainly got to know you on the dais. And what I always appreciated was your ability to bring humanity, right? Humor for sure. But one of the marks of a great leader is accessibility, the ability for people to feel like you're available, and not just available like you can call them. I mean available heart to heart. Like you get it, you feel it, you're with us. And the humor is part of that, but certainly just the accessibility. Like here's a human person up on this council. And I think it's really hard sometimes when we get elected to a board or something, we think we have to put on our big girl pants and our big boy pants and we have to be formal. And you've never been that guy. You've just been a human being who is caring and open and of service. You've basically said, use me. Here's my hands. Here I am. And you've been accessible and loving and open-hearted to all of us. So thank you, Ricardo, for all your good days here on the council and in our town.
We're here.
Well, Ricardo, it's hard coming up later in the game. Everyone's taken my thunder. And I especially wanted to mention the very clever rotation that always somehow works in your favor when some event is happening. What I most appreciate about you is that you cut to the chase. It's just, we all get very wordy and you just cut to the chase. You just synthesize it, you cut to the chase, and you find a middle ground. And I'm a Libra. I very much appreciate the scales. You are too. And fairness, and you are fair. And I really have appreciated that. And you're a really nice guy. You're also a bear cat, so appreciate that. And I just wanted, you know, we don't have Pat Giorni able to come anymore to do her stitching. She used to always stitch needlepoint when someone was retiring, give them a pillow. So I don't needlepoint, but I just, I know how much you appreciate what counts in our city. And I remember one of the first meetings you went on and on about our trees. And so I took this photo in 20 of our beautiful El Camino. Was before actually the years of the storms. And it was because it was in COVID, I could go in the middle of the street, no problem, and take a beautiful picture. And so I just wanted to give you this as a memory. I mean, it will be a memory for all of us, but I really appreciate your support on things that matter in this city. Definitely appreciate it.
Thank you, Jen. All right, next people, I know I see Mike Nagler, and I think I saw John Root has a card, and a few more people, so please.
Very briefly, I just want to say something about Ricardo's handshake. He has a handshake, I think, that is unique, and it's the only kind of handshake I ever got like this. And it's a handshake that begins somewhere back, okay? And in a great arc, it moves across his body and greets you in the middle somewhere. And I mean, not recently, I was walking down Burlingame Avenue and Ricardo was walking toward me and I saw that handshake. I could not wait to get that handshake because it's such a manifestation of your humanity. I mean, you just get a kick out of being alive, right? And it's in that handshake and it stops time because it makes me, as I'm getting, feel bigger than I am. And I've never served on a board with you. I've never served on a council, a commission, but I'm sure that aspect of you is something you'll all miss. And I'm really looking forward to getting a lot more of those handshakes in the future. Thanks, Ricardo.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay.
Hang on.
Yes, I know we have more. John Root, I saw him. I'm just working through the cards.
Well, you can't exactly choose who you're going to follow, but wow. Ricardo, you and I have known one another for a fair number of years. I think we first met on the school bond oversight committee, and you did a wonderful job there. Sitting up there a couple times a month is what some people think you all do, and that's it. But many of us know that this is a lot of work, and it's a lot of stress. You've made lots of sacrifices, 10 years, wow. I think one of probably your happiest times was you standing out there in the full sun when the community center was being opened up and you had quite an audience. I think I could just say thank you. It's been such a pleasure knowing you. And you've sacrificed a lot. But thank you for everything
I do want to recognize that John is one of our former councilmen and he was a colleague of Ricardo's. And I just appreciate that you came back, John, to celebrate Ricardo and want to recognize your service as well.
Thank you. I served a short time here, but many years on school boards. And sitting up there listening to some of this stuff is really something. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, John. All right, I think we have a few more. Anyone? I see. Okay, please, Andrea Kamathi.
Mayor, council members, Andrea Papachon, President. So I really just want to thank Councilmember Ricardo Ortiz for how well you served our district, our city, our region. I mean, no doubt everyone knows how much work it is. So I won't go into a lot of that, but I did want to just say that, you know, we had a conversation about like SFO Community Roundtable and, you know, all the work that you put into that. And one thing that I think we can really appreciate is like planes don't fly over our heads day and night and make noise. And so, you know, that makes a big difference to people in our district. So thank you for that. And just even your work on the CCAG board, you help with the water pollution prevention program, you know, for stormwater. And, you know, people don't think about that every day. And we don't have to because, you know, of your service on the board. So thank you for that. You have always been approachable. I really appreciate how you make yourself available. You're a critical thinker. You give honest feedback and you share your opinion. And I've really appreciated that about you. You know, you've made an exceptional council member and you have very big shoes to fill. So I just want to pass the mic, say thank you, and I will pass the mic to my husband, Kamathi Marangu, for a couple more other comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea.
I agree with everything she said.
Good husband.
Do better.
Were you expecting a rebuttal? I mean, next time I'll be sure to go to Burlingame Fresh Market, pick up some popcorn to go full entertainment. But seriously, Mayor Coulson, Vice Mayor Beach, Council Member Brownrigg, Council Member Stevenson, and my dear geriatric friend who's decided to hang up his cleats right off into the sunset and pick up his gold watch. as a team and individually, you don't get thanked enough for everything that you all do. And this part, I'm actually going to address the whole city council. I'm in awe of the many issues you tackle on a regular basis and on our behalf. And Burlingame works. It just works, right? But it's not by chance. And the staff is excellent, and they are supported and empowered by you. But the buck stops with you. So I want to take a moment and thank you all. Now, Councilmember Ortiz, you have served our city with particular distinction. Our sons were still playing in AYSO when you took office. And I don't know how you managed, but I suppose Lauren deserves some credit too. You've applied your considerable financial acumen to the benefit of Burlingame in several volunteer positions. And I remember you sounding the alarm about the city's pension fund when you first took office. It was years later, only after I joined Samsara's board, that I began to understand just how important what you were sounding with Mayor Coulson and, of course, the city commission. That long-range thinking has just provided so much stability and strong retention among the staff. And we will continue to benefit from the work you did there for years to come. So your legacy is secure. When we moved to the hills, I loved seeing the planes without having to fear them. And on the odd day, we will be treated to some dramatic flybys at close range and so forth. But it's rare enough that I can call that a treat. So I know you've represented us well there too. So thank you, Ricardo, for all your contributions to making Burlingame shine over the past decade. And please keep a space for me in your man cave so that we can watch Arsenal. Yes, Arsenal play with your newfound free time.
Thank you. Cannon, come on up.
Oh, we're all supposed to say our name and where we live?
You don't have, no, you don't have to do that anymore.
Buddy.
Against law. You just get to come up. We know who you are.
Okay.
We know where you live too.
Yeah. Well, I want to tell you, I came tonight for two purposes. Once, because I found out it was Ricardo's last meeting. And for about 2 months, I have really thought about all 5 of you every single day. Because when I go out of my house, either I go down Bernal to Hillside, and thank you for the 4-way stop. It's safer. I can drive my car without waiting, 5 minutes for the 8 o'clock people to go by, and it's safer for walkers and people with dogs. I honestly think of you every time I come there. I hope I get over this, but, and if I go the other direction, because I live on the corner of Bernal and Easton, and I walk or drive down Easton, thank you for the 40 trees that you have planted. I remember being at so many meetings where we talked about, in both instances, the stop sign and the trees, you listened to the community. And that's what is so wonderful about all 5 of you. So I counted those trees. First of all, I was in shock because there's so much sun on Easton. But then I've counted the trees and I'm watching them grow. And I might be here in 10 years when they're really in good shape, So, and I remember at the meeting, somebody said, well, if you're going to plant these trees, will you please plant them soon? Because, things take time. And you did. And I just appreciate it. So I hope you all are here too for 10 or 20 or 30 years. And then when I heard it was going to be, so all these 2 months I've been thinking, I have to write them a note, a handwritten note. Yeah, so I do that when I'm in my car. And then I get home and I think, I'll write an email, because you can just write one email and it goes to all, and I haven't done that. And then I find out it's your last night. This is my last chance, huh? Yeah. So anyway, I want to thank you especially for being so gracious when I called you or stopped you on the street and told you how I felt about something that was an issue before you. You always listened and discussed. You know, not just listen and take it all in, but you told me what your thinking was, and sometimes you or I changed our minds, and that is a beautiful thing. There are many people in this city who love you for that kind of interaction and possibility. You know, some people will never have that with their elected officials. So thanks a lot. You're a great friend. And I just am a better person for having had you be a council member. Thank you, Ricardo. And thank you all for the work.
I think that got everyone unless Lauren wants to talk. She's sitting in the back going, no, no, but I will offer you the opportunity. No, okay. Not to put you on the spot. Ricardo, sit down, sit down. If that's it, I think that might be it for members of the public. I am sure in the days that precede this, you will receive many emails and many people stopping you on the street with open arms and gratitude and thanks for the hard work that you've done. And just on behalf of all of us, you have been an incredible colleague, and we are so fortunate to have served with you. So it's been quite appropriate to give you at least an hour, given the 10 years.
Wait,
So at this
I have
point,
another hour I got right.
I'm going to turn it over to you to wrap it up.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Coulson. And Chris, it's funny that you said what you said about the note, because you did send us a note before where you thanked us for doing something. And we get a lot of notes not always thanking us. So I really do appreciate that. And I appreciate everybody who was here today to say really nice words. Mike, I'll remember the handshake. Next time I see you, I'll start even further back. But thank you. You know, this is truly a great city, and we all appreciate it. And it takes a lot of teamwork and a lot of people working together to make it what it is, and it really is special. But it starts. I'd like to first recognize my friend Lisa Goldman, and yes, we are friends, not just boss and whatever. So Lisa has to report to 5 people. It's not easy. We don't always agree on things. She's always been very careful not to cross our, there's certain things that we tell her that don't get around to anybody else. And I really appreciate that. And you managed to do it. You're just a class act. You do it beautifully. And then you have the staff that you have the longevity of the staff that's here mainly because of your leadership and because you're so good and take care of them. You were able to build a team spirit around them. And you have some people here who were here before I was elected and are still here. And then we've been able to attract some fabulous people because of your leadership. And so I hope that people appreciate what you bring to the table, and I hope you never leave, because this city will hurt, so you can't retire. So don't look at me like that. And then there's a few, I'd like to mention some of the other department heads. And I'm going to use first names. I'm just going to use first names. So Syed, again, your commitment to the city has been great. And I've always enjoyed going and talking about you. And I have a lot of conversations to finish also. We have a few more dinners to talk about geopolitics and history. So we'll get together to do that. I'm sorry Kevin is not here, but the work that he's done, just the thought of our housing element was accepted, and a lot of other cities are still struggling with it. But our general plan, the things that Kevin has accomplished are just amazing. So
he's online watching right now.
Okay, Kevin, you're amazing wherever you are. And then my friend Margaret. And I always think about what we went through with the community center. I can't call it the rec center, the community center, okay? But when Margaret gets a vision, she will go all out to go get it done. And there might be some bodies in the way, but she'll get it done. And so appreciate that. We have a lot of parks and a lot of great things in the city because of her commitment and her dedication. I want to shout out to Maria. you've been here a short period of time, but man, you've handled some really tough stuff in this little short period of time that you've had. And so thank you for that. Brad, I forget what it was that, Councilmember Brownrigg said, but something about you being the Minister of Culture. So I think that there's a danger in the library to let it get kind of stale and old, and you have kept this energy there that's just amazing. And it's such an important part of this town, and you keep it bright going the whole time. So thank you for that. Chief Matucci. Thank you. I mean, you've been great. It's great. I've known you since you were Captain Mike. So really appreciate the fact that you're a local, that you know the stuff, you know where all the skeletons are. So there's things that you know that I don't want to know. But thank you for everything you've done. And, you know, a lot of times when we get these great people and we're always afraid that they're going to be followed by, or who they're going to be followed. But we had Eric Woolman, who was just a fabulous chief, and we're all sitting here going, oh my God, now what? When he retired, and you just stepped up and done a great job. And speaking of that, we had a great city attorney named Kathleen Kane, who, when I was new, she spent many hours with me explaining things. And so Kathleen, wherever you are, thank you for everything. And once again, when she left, we were all going, oh my gosh, what now? And we got Michael. So we're very, very fortunate. You've been wonderful. You've been a great communicator. You've walked us through some really thorny issues. And I'm just really happy you're here. And as a resident, I'm really happy you're here. You can't retire either. And again, Helen, you came in, stepped up, done a great job for us. Really appreciate you taking some of these very dull subjects and done these presentations. You get better every time you get up and do the presentation. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And now let me talk a little bit about my colleagues.
Oh, no.
Huh? Oh, no, because she's a Liverpool fan. I'm not going to talk about her. Megan, you know what? There's so many things that we have to file, and we have to do this and we have to do that as members of the council. And it's poor Megan's job to chase after us and make sure we do it on time. So I appreciate all the reminders, but just your love for the process, your love for the elections, for everything, and you know, the stickers and all these things you've done to bring these ideas up front. You've been just wonderful. So thank you, and truly appreciate all the babysitting you've done for me. So that's really nice. Okay. So when we were talking a minute ago about the parking structure and what I said, the parking structure and the whole concept, the whole idea of that our great parking lots were being underutilized came from Michael Brownrigg. And some of the stuff that we've done and that project came out of that idea, of that whole concept that we had underutilized our parking lot. And that we're in one of the most, you know, sought after locations in the world, and we can't just have empty space sitting there. And we've really changed, and we've really done some great things. And I really give it to you. There's some of your ideas that got us here, and I know you've gotten beat up for some of the stuff that you come up with. And I personally have been one of the ones who beat you up. So, but again, you think outside of the box, you come up with some great ideas. I really have appreciated our time together, and I see you as a good friend. So I look forward to hanging out with you more. Ms. Donna. Yeah, okay, the first time I met Donna, I was not the treasurer for BC, I was the treasurer for the dinner dance. And Donna was in charge of the auction. And I met her and I said, oh my God, this lady is a force to be reckoned with. And when you talk about Margaret leaving bodies in the way, when she wanted something done, it got done. And it did, and it was pretty amazing to watch what she did with that auction that time. And ever since, I've just had a pretty huge respect for you, because all the things you do, and we're really lucky, and I mean, I say that for all four of you, but we're really lucky to have you with your expertise, with your energy, with what you bring to the table. The city is very, very fortunate to have you. So thank you. And again, and you guys keep talking for how long we've known each other. You guys, come on, man, making me feel old. So, and Emily, it's been wonderful working with you. You're very disciplined and you get things done, and your regional commitments have been great. So thank you for all your work. Peter, yeah, it was your fault that I got involved with BCE.
I know.
So you kind of marked me as that. Ask him, he'll do it because he's anyway. So, but I appreciate it. I think you're a great add to the council. I'm glad you're here. I think we're all better off for it. And I like your kind of meats and potatoes approach to issues. So yeah, thank you, man, and look forward to hanging out many times more. But before I go any further, when somebody acknowledged my wife for all the time that, she kind of allows me to be here, I think she's scared to death that I'm going to be hanging out at home on Monday nights. What am I going to talk to this guy about? But thank you, Lauren, because you have been incredibly supportive the whole time. And I know that you got sick and tired of hearing about CEQA and and RENA and all these things. But anyway, you've been great, so thank you for that. When I talk about my colleagues and the people who this time they spend here and the caliber of people you have here working for the city for, I mean, it's free what you're doing. We're very lucky. And that goes on to the commissioners. We have many commissioners full of people, some of them sitting in this room, that spend a lot of time and give a lot of effort to the city for free. So when you think of some of the things that you like that are being done, be a Chris Cannon and send that little note, because it makes a big difference, because we get a lot of notes saying the opposite. So just remember that these people spend a lot of time representing Burlingame, not only here on the dais, but in all these regional boards. So a lot of room for appreciation. The fire board, that's the other ones that I would just want to say welcome to the new chief, David Pucci, but also want to shout out to Bruce Barron and John Kammeyer, who I was really great to work with them when I was new to the fire board, and they spent the time to just kind of explain how the whole thing works. And my friends at CCAG, Davina, Marie, and Gina, thank you guys. It's been great. There's a few more on there. Adam Rack. Airport Roundtable, and I got to say thank you, Linda, because we went through some really tough times at the roundtable when we lost our coordinator, and you stepped up and helped out, Linda Wolin. And so to Al Hindi, Al Royce, Terry O'Connell, some of the many people that are involved in the roundtable. And then, see, you guys are used to me being brief. Not tonight. Okay. So when you talk about it, and I think John Root just mentioned it, my big smile when the community center was finished, because when I first got elected, one of the first subcommittees that I was appointed to was the Citizens Advisory Committee for the community center. So I was involved in it, and Jen sat with me. You were there for the whole time, right? So we sat through it. We came up with different designs. We talked about this and ended up talking about materials and everything. And so that to see it come to fruition, to figure out how we figured out how to fund it, to make it look the way it does, it's such a gem for this city. And that it's, to me, yes, that was probably one of the crowning achievements of what I've done here for 10 years. And yeah, I still smile when I think of that day when I was standing there and it was hot in the heat and watching people walk in for the first time. It was wonderful. Our general plan and the rezoning of the north end into residential, I think that was something that I'm extremely proud of. And again, thinking outside the box a little bit, and we came up with our mandate for housing and did the right thing, because I think that you can't deny that there is a need for housing, but we did it by respecting the existing neighborhoods and kept keeping the quality of life of the city. I'm sure some people will disagree with me, but I believe that we kept the integrity of what Burlingame is all about, and I'm really proud of that. And when Mayor Colson says that I was doing this or that in the negotiation for Topgolf, and it wasn't really me. She grabbed them, threw them on the table, twisted their arm, and in her gentle way, got some concessions. We ended up with a great deal, and I'm really looking forward to going and hitting some balls. and you'll probably be the first one that goes with me, so.
I might outdrive you, so you better watch out.
Bring it. Talk about the other thing that I'm extremely proud of is the Village of Burlingame. Now back to give it to Michael. Some of the whole concept about the use of the parking lots was something he brought up before we didn't even, it wasn't even in the radar. So Village of Burlingame, where we have, I believe it's 136 units of affordable housing. And on top of that, we have a huge parking structure that now everybody uses because now it's always full. It was fun when it was new and I could always find somewhere to park in there, but now it's always full. And also, I think Michael mentioned that in getting through the pandemic, it's, you know, you think about it, it's like, yeah, whatever. Yeah. But you know what? Our revenues dropped by $29 million. And we got through it without laying people off, without cutting back services, without skipping a beat. And our staff did a great job dealing with the situation. And I got to give it to Emily because she was the mayor at the time and she kind of led us through some really dark times. And we got through it. And we're still not quite recovered, but we're still making it through. And I think that is, that says something about how prudent we were and how we had our reserves so that we can continue to do this without any cutbacks. Other cities didn't do as well. So I'm very proud of that. Two projects that are going to change the quality of life of Burlingame that are really important. El Camino grade separation, and we were just talking about it with the Beautification Commission. It's a compromise, and you know, some people are going to be disappointed because some of these big trees are going to come down, but it's a great compromise, and we worked with Caltrans to get it to where we are. It's going to look a little different. The new trees are going to take a little while to grow. But there's not going to be any more flooding. There's going to be a flat surface. The sidewalks are going to be ADA compliant, which is a big deal. So that's a huge project that is going to change the life of Burlingame. And the El Camino the Broadway grade separation. Okay, we have been, and I can't imagine, I remember how many times going to soccer practice and getting stuck behind the train over there.
Yep.
And once that project is complete and we can just go through without stopping for a train, especially when they're not talking about electrification, where there's going to be many, many more trains per hour, particularly in the peak times. So when those two projects are complete, we're going to change the life of Burlingamers forever. And I think that's something to be really proud of. So thank you all. And thanks to all of you who came and said a few words. Mark. This has been a great 10 years, and look, I'm going to be watching you guys. I look forward to it. So, thank you. Thank you all. We have a meeting to finish. Come on.
Well, thank you, everyone. No one will be offended if people leave. We have just the regular business now to conduct, but I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. Really, really appreciate it. Good night. Good night.
Lauren, you can leave too. It's okay.
Hey, Lauren, on Monday nights, my husband's usually available, so just pair him up. All right. We're going to go on to public comments. If there are any members of the public who have a comment to make that is related to something that is not on our agenda, please feel free to step up to the microphone right now, and we'll go with 3 minutes. I think I have a card. Is it John? Are you speaking? Yes, please.
Hi. Good evening, Mayor, council members, staff. Ricardo, congratulations.
Thank you.
My name is John Medina. I'm a business agent for Sprinkler Fitters Local 483. I represent journeymen and apprentices in the fire sprinkler industry. In 2021, this is funny because you brought up this parking garage today. This is actually something I came here to talk about. In 2021, when I was walking that job, for us, the construction part phase of it, the parking garage on Lorton. I ran into two unrepresented sprinkler fitters who I've known actually for a couple of years, trying to get them into the union. The foreman was excited. He was significantly making more money than his previously employer, who was traditionally working residential type jobs. When I asked him how much he was making on this project, I realized he was still very far off and short of the area standard prevailing wage. Knowing this was a city-owned property at one point, I was able to verify that these wages through the certified payroll reports. They were being when I got these reports, I realized that they were being cheated. Third-party labor compliance officer was able to then file a report and complaint with the labor commissioner with the state of California. 2 years later, this last September, the report I have here, I have a couple of copies for you guys, from the Department of Industrial Relations, the Division of Labor Standards Enforcement. It was also sent here to the city manager and Lisa Goldman, and to the council. Hopefully you guys were in recipients of that as well, on September 14th. And the civil wage and penalty assessment, also known as QAPA, against the out-of-state general contractor, Pacific West Builders, and its subcontractor, 3 Alarm Fire Protection. The state labor commissioner determined wage theft violations and a fine to the amount of $91,337.92. 7 months later, the workers still have not received any compensation. And as I spoke to one of them last week, he's still scared to say anything and fear of losing his job. The city's done a lot of good things, and I heard a lot of those tonight, and I don't disagree, but some things can go unseen. The city can look into policies around labor protections that can ban bad contractors from bidding, compliance protections to ensure that wages and benefits are being paid, along with appropriate overtime and correction of classification of workers. Otherwise, this will continue, and unfortunately, it may be the case with Topgolf as well, as we're still not getting the certified payroll reports we've requested over 2 weeks ago. My business manager has been aware of this, Jeff Dixon, and he's actually going to forward this complaint over to the Attorney General Rob Bonta's office as well, to make sure, see what we can do for these guys that didn't get paid. One of them was $40,000 that's owed to one of the workers on that project. So I ask you to.
I'll go ahead and allow you to continue, John, just if you want to wrap it up real quick.
Right on. I just want to say, if we can try to figure this out and work on something in the future, look at something as far as the labor protections on these great projects that the city's trying to do. There's some ways that we can try to look into a policy. Myself and the building trades, as a representative of the building trades, with Bart Pantoja and with Julie, with the Labor Council, we have a lot of ideas and things that are working successfully to make sure workers aren't being cheated, especially here in the city.
Thank you, John.
And can I hand these to you, or?
Yes, you can give them to the city clerk, please. Madam City Clerk will take them.
Thank
We appreciate it. And as you know, John, we cannot respond because it's not an agendized item, but we certainly appreciate that you came tonight to bring this to our attention. And I will work in the next few days with the staff to determine what the next steps are.
Kind of feel bad, Ricardo, bringing this up to you on a night of celebration, but this.
It's okay.
And it is also very much a concern, right?
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Are there any more members of the public? Julie, please. We have Ms. Blinn.
Thank you. And you shouldn't feel bad because now Councilmember Ortiz, he gets to leave. So, so I am Julie Lynn. I'm the head of the Labor Council. I'm in fact not Bart Pantoja. So you are stuck with me and my terrible notes as I attempt to read my writing. Alrighty. So thank you so much for giving me a few moments of your time this evening. I will just dovetail off of my colleagues' comments. Wage theft is a huge issue in the construction industry that disproportionately impacts our BIPOC workers and our recent immigrants. It's also a big piece of why we in the labor community fought for over a decade to get an established Office of Labor Standards and Enforcement in the county, which thankfully we were successful and that office should open in July. But this is something that we ask you to keep in mind as you look toward making decisions in the future about what you're going to build and how you're going to continue to leverage opportunities to improve your beautiful city and how to keep using your public dollars for public good. We encourage you to consider doing so under a project labor agreement. This means that your projects will be built by highly skilled and trained local workers. They'll be built correctly the first time, they'll be built on time and on budget, and these will be built by these skilled and trained workers who are earning the wages, the benefits, and are taking advantage of the hours and working conditions which they were promised and to which they're all entitled. So while we know all of you govern with the best of intentions and you lead with your hearts, sometimes you encounter bad actors. So there are a lot of vehicles in place and a lot of tools that can be utilized to hopefully stave off such incidences in the future. There are some local policies that you all could look at. There are the protections of project labor agreements, but there are things that you all can do to make sure that the jobs that are happening in your city because of you are the type of jobs that you would want to hold or that you would want your family members to hold as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lynn. We very much appreciate your service to the labor movement and the many, many people who are unionized in this county. Thank you. Okay, are there any other members of the public who would like to?
We do have an email as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Madam City Clerk?
It says, I hope Burlingame residents are not paying for the police officers who protect the inventory at the Sephora and Apple stores on Burlingame Ave. I hope the city is receiving payments from these companies for the city's entire cost of those public safety officers and the maintenance of their patrol cars while they provide private loss prevention services to these companies. There's no reason that Apple, which earned $97 billion in net income last year, cannot fund its own store security. The city council should be especially mindful when it's so recently heard how a handful of retired public safety officers are absorbing a great chunk of the city's underfunded CalPERS obligations. I certainly don't want to be paying for cops' retirements after they spend their time providing private security services. I'd much rather see those stores hire separate private security and see our police protecting Burlingame residents. For example, these officers could be stationed along the El Camino Real intersections between Chapin and Howard to protect Burlingame residents who are routinely nearly hit by drivers while walking across the street instead of being stationed along Burlingame Ave to protect corporate profits. Thank you.
Thank you. To the chagrin of the city attorney, I'm going to say we do not pay for those officers.
Yep, we're reimbursed.
We're reimbursed.
Fully loaded costs of those officers.
Yeah. Thank you. But we appreciate the public comment. Okay, we'll move on to, are there any other agenda, okay, no other public comments. We're going to go ahead and close public comments. And we're going to move on to the approval of the consent calendar. And I believe that there is one item on here that Vice Mayor Beach will need to recuse herself for. So would you like to make the motion just because?
Yes, I'm just
Okay,
put
yeah.
public record that item 9L is 9L. 9L, due to a potential conflict of interest and a written ruling from the FPPC, I need to leave the room and I will be right back after we vote. Now,
No, you need to vote on the first part.
we vote on the first part.
Have a public comment on
Yeah.
one of the items.
Okay, so you're going to stay?
Yep,
and then-
that will-
All right, so I will also, so I'm going to ask, does anyone have anything they want to pull off other than L?
9F needs
9F. Okay, we have a member of the public that wants to pull off 9F. All
F.
right, let's start with approval of all the items with the exception of 9F and 9L.
Madam Mayor, I move to approve AB 9A, B, C, D, E, G, H, I, J, and K.
Second.
Thank you very much. We have a second, we have a motion by Vice Mayor Beach and a second by Councilman Ortiz. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Brownrigg,
Aye.
Councilmember Stevenson,
Aye.
Councilmember Ortiz,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Beach,
Aye.
Mayor Coulson.
Yes. All right, we'll dispense with that and we will move to item F. Would you please read the member of the public's request?
Yes, we got a few emails in about this item. First one says, I'm writing to express my deep concern and objection to the proposed replacement of the grass athletic field at Cornavaca Park with artificial turf. While I acknowledge the persistent drainage issues plaguing the current grass field, I believe that the environmental and health risks associated with artificial turf, including the presence of per and something I can't pronounce substances, also known as PFAs, outweigh the convenience it offers. Artificial turf, often touted as a solution to drainage problems, brings with it a host of environmental and health hazards. One of the most pressing concerns is the presence of PFAs, a group of toxic chemicals used in the manufacturing process of synthetic turf. These chemicals have been linked to serious health issues, including cancer, reproductive problems, and immune system disorders. The long-term exposure to PFAs it poses a significant risk to the health and well-being of our community, particularly our young athletes who would be in direct contact with the turf during sports activities. Moreover, artificial turf also poses multiple environmental challenges. Production of artificial turf involves the use of non-renewable resources such as petroleum-based plastics. Manufacturing processes can generate greenhouse gas emissions and other pollutants. Synthetic grass also has a limited lifespan and eventually needs to be replaced. Disposing of old artificial turf can be problematic as most of it is not biodegradable. It typically ends up in landfills where it contributes to the accumulation of plastic waste. Artificial turf also degrades beforehand, leading to the release of microplastics into the environment. These tiny plastic particles can contaminate soil and waterways, posing risks to wildlife and ecosystems. Synthetic turf can also significantly increase local temperatures compared to natural grass. The material absorbs and retains heat, contributing to the urban heat island effect, which can have adverse effects on local microclimates and energy consumption for cooling. Additionally, artificial turf does not support biodiversity to the same extent as natural grass. It provides limited habitat for insects, birds, and other wildlife compared to natural grass ecosystems. While artificial turf reduces the need for water and chemical inputs compared to natural grass, it still requires maintenance. Cleaning and disinfecting artificial turf surfaces can involve the use of chemicals that may pose environmental risks if not managed properly. While I understand the frustration caused by the frequent unusability of the grass field due to drainage issues, I urge the council to explore alternative solutions that prioritize both functionality and sustainability. Implementing natural grass reinforcement techniques such as soil aeration and drainage improvements can effectively address the drainage problems without compromising the health and safety of our community members. We also received a few other emails. Dear City Council members, I'm the Regional Commissioner for the Burlingame AYSO. I'm also a coach and referee. We support about 1,300 players in the fall and 500 in our new spring program. We had to cancel all of our 5U to 8U age group matches this morning because Washington Park was closed due to wet fields. That means 500 kids that could have had an hour of activity and social interaction missed out on that because we didn't have access to a turf field that could be used after a day of rain. I live about a block from Cuernavaca and have 2 dogs, so I certainly understand some neighborhood resistance to adding turf rather than keeping natural grass. I have a puppy that loves to chase a ball at Cuernavaca, and those days are certainly over. But as a citizen with conflicting interests, my support lies in the solution that will have the greatest positive community impact. The number of kids that will benefit from a turf field at Cuernavaca must be over 1,000 between AYSO and Burlingame Soccer Club. The grass up there is pretty problematic. It gets really muddy and buggy on the periphery, and the field can be really uneven, which poses risk of injury to players and referees. There's still a nice grassy area at Cuernavaca adjacent to the playground that is inviting for picnics, kite flying, etc. Please consider prioritizing the 1,000+ kids that will benefit from a field that isn't impacted by rain, mud, flies, etc. And we have two more, sorry. Dear City of Burlingame Council members, Burlingame Soccer Club would like to thank you for supporting youth sports. We are very happy that the city is turning Cuernavaca into a resilient turf field, which will allow our youth to keep practicing and playing year-round. Every year, natural grass field closures due to rain cause numerous practices and game cancellations. In addition, the grass field get closed for 3 months for renovation every year. All this negatively impacts thousands of Burlingame youth sports participants and their family. The resilience turf fields such as Murray, Franklin, and BIS have made a huge difference. However, due to the high demand for the turf fields and with so many youth sports organizations that we have here in Burlingame, there's definitely a huge need for more resilient turf fields. Thank you again for turfing Cuernavaca. The year-round field access is very important, not only for our youth athletic development, but for their social, emotional well-being. And the last email comes from Shep. And he says, on behalf of the Coyotes Lacrosse Club, a 501c3 nonprofit, and our volunteer board and coaches, I'm writing in support of replacing the grass field at Cuernavaca. As a Burlingame resident since 2012, I've used Cuernavaca as a coach and board member of Burlingame Youth Baseball. I served as a coach and board member for 10 years. I also used Cuernavaca as a coach and a ref for AYS. There are many reasons that turfing Cuernavaca makes sense. One, Cuernavaca doesn't drain well. This means that it is often unusable in February, March, and April, owing to rain and standing water. Two, when it is usable, the quality of the grass and ground is not great. I personally twisted an ankle while roughing, and I've had to put out cones to mark deep divots and holes in hopes of avoiding more twisted ankles. Three, lining grass fields is challenging. The lines fade quickly, and you end up with a confusion or a need to put cones out to mark boundaries. In a game like lacrosse with lines which pertain to player safety, faded lines become not just a nuisance or inconvenience, but a very serious safety issue. However, the most important reason of all is that our youth athletes have a dire lack of field space. Our community is so active and involved, and our youth are so fortunate to have many recreational options available, from lacrosse to soccer to baseball to softball to flag frisbee. However, these options are dramatically curtailed and adversely impacted if there are no fields available. Our youth sports organizations use every minute of available field time, and we all need more to support the kids who want to play. Thank you.
Thank you much. To the general public, as you can glean from the comments, this is an item that is regarding turfing Cuernavaca Park Athletic Field. I'm going to go ahead and open it to colleagues if anyone has any comments. Councilman Brownrigg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and appreciate the input from the public. I would have pulled this myself. So this was part of a plan that we set back in 2018. And I'm going to vote in support of Cuernavaca because I know that field very well. But I share the concerns of the first letter writer that we know a lot more about artificial turf than we used to. And I understand that if you run youth sports, then you'd like everything to be turfed. I get it. It means you can play rain or shine, pretty much. But I think there's a lot more that we know, and I am concerned about putting plastic everywhere. PFAS is now, the EPA is saying can't be in our drinking water. It's going to cost communities across this country tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars to make sure there's no PFAS in the water. I suspect that there's artificial turf that doesn't have PFAS, but I don't know that for a fact. I would suggest that this issue might be brought back for consideration by the council as a general matter. Village Park is called out as something that was part of the plan from 2018. I have to say I wasn't paying attention, or I don't know whether that means we're planning to turf Village Park, because Ray Park was also called out, and that's not artificial turf. So I don't really understand what the plan was. I guess I should go back and read it. But it seems to me that with respect to artificial turf, it is worth a conversation about how much more of that we want on whatever fields are remaining. And so I wanted to share those concerns and suggest that this might be a topic of reconsideration. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Anyone else?
Concur.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, so I agree, and I appreciate Councilman Brammer bringing this up. I think that the other component of this would be lights on fields, which would extend the usage both of turf and whatever. And we know that lighting has changed as well. So what I might do is ask our Director of Park and Recreation to kick this down to our Park and Rec Commission for them to take an initial look at it before it comes to us and think about it, maybe put some recommendations together, and then it can filter back up. Would that be okay, Margaret? Okay, thank you, Director Golumstead. Okay, with that caveat, yes,
Can I just
Peter.
make a comment as well? As part of that, for guidance to the commission is, it's not just the health risk and things that we want to reconsider and think thoughtfully about what the strategy should be going forward, because 2018 is a fair bit ago and we've learned more, but it's also the cost. And artificial turf has a lifespan, and it's not great. And, you know, the cost to provide an athletic field, you know, $2.3 million every 5 years versus, you know, maybe some alternative solutions or the cost of lights for extending field use that are already turfed and those types of things. So I would just request that the planning or the commission look at that, you know, kind of holistic.
Right. The comparison of what it costs to mow and reseed and grass and shut down what we lose on
Yeah.
field, because there's also opportunity cost of field revenue that we would get from the clubs. So the whole package of what,
It's got to be the system, right?
yeah, what it costs and then what it costs to maintain, like just on a per square foot basis, that'd be very helpful to understand. And I think you have to include kind of everything in there. All right. If we have now direction, I would entertain a motion.
Move to approve item 9F.
All right, do I have a second? Anyone? I'll make a second. Okay, we have a motion from Councilman Ortiz. We have a second from Mayor Donna Colson. And may I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Brownrigg,
Yes.
Councilmember Stevenson.
Yes.
Councilmember Ortiz.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Beach,
Yes.
Mayor Coulson.
Yes. Okay, motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much to the members of the public who weighed in. And thank you for our Park and Recreation, yes, you had commission who will look into some of these questions for further review. All right, the item we have before us here is item L, which is a proposed ordinance for a development agreement between the city of Burlingame and I think it's DW Burlingame One Owner LLC, et cetera, et cetera. And this is essentially approving a development agreement between the city and the developers of 1200 to 1340 Old Bay Shore Highway. CEQA determination environmental impact report certified by the City Council on April 1. Does anyone want to, Michael, do you want to comment or?
So the staff provided a very comprehensive staff report, excuse me, at your April 1st meeting. This is before you for second reading.
Yep.
I'll note that the council adopted the first reading on a 4-0 vote. So staff is here for any questions if you have them, and I think representatives from DIVCA West are here as well.
Okay, great. So does anyone have any questions or comments? If not, I'm going to open it up to members of the public. Does any member of the public have anything they would like to say on this particular development agreement? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the public comment and move to a vote. May I have a motion and a second, please?
I would welcome the motion to approve item 9L, Madam Mayor.
I second.
All right, we have a motion by Councilman Brownrigg, a second by Councilman Ortiz. May we please have a roll call vote?
Actually, Steve.
I mean, sorry, Stevenson, I'm
So,
just
I don't mind.
taking your thunder.
A break with a love fest.
Yeah,
Amigo.
sorry about that. May we please have a roll call vote?
Councilmember Brownrigg.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevenson.
Yes.
Councilmember Ortiz.
Yes.
Mayor Coulson.
Yes. All right, and with that, we'll bring back Vice Mayor Beach and we will proceed to public hearing. 10A, introduction of a first reading of an ordinance renewing the Burlingame Police Department military equipment use policy CEQA determination exempt pursuant to state CEQA guidelines. And I will have, I believe, our city attorney. City Attorney Gina.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'm doing this with the chief as well.
Okay, and we have Chief Matucci to join us.
So this is a very quick staff report. You have seen this for twice now, but basically back in, so that I can get the next slide, please. Here's a recommended procedure for the evening that you receive the staff report. You ask us questions, you conduct a public hearing, and then adopt the first reading of the ordinance. Next slide, please. So by way of background, AB 481, which became effective in 2022, requires that public agencies that have a law enforcement agency prior to seeking funding for, acquiring, or deploying military equipment, as that term is defined in the ordinance, must adopt a military equipment use policy which authorizes those actions, the acquisition and deployment. The policy must also authorize the deployment of the military equipment by other collaborating law enforcement agencies. The purpose of the statute is to increase transparency, accountability, and oversight of acquiring and using military equipment. This is your brief history of what you've done previously in the past. Next slide, please. Burlingame PD does not possess tactical equipment obtained from the military. I just want to make that very, very clear to the council and to the public. It does not possess equipment that is designed for military use. However, military equipment under the state law is defined very, very broadly, and that includes things like drones, high caliber firearms and munitions, command and control equipment. The military equipment as defined under the state statute that BPD does deploy is listed here on the slide. Next slide, please. In addition, the Burlingame Police Department is part of North County Regional SWAT, and they also deploy or use and deploy military equipment as defined in the state statute, and that listing is here. These pieces of equipment are owned by the SWAT team and not by Burlingame PD. Next slide. So annual review. So the statute requires that the city do, before they do a approval of deploying equipment in the coming year, they have to do a look back and do an annual review of how we did over the prior year. The annual review requires you to make certain findings before you authorize any deployment in the upcoming year. In addition, the statute requires the police department to conduct a community meeting to educate the public and get feedback as well. So back in March 7th, the police department held a community meeting, and we also advertised that community meeting on the website and posted the proposed military equipment use policy on the police department's website. There was one attendee at the community meeting in March. Oh, okay, last Tuesday. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. So yeah, so we did hold that community meeting and did receive that feedback from the public. Next slide. So findings required. So the ordinance, so the military equipment use policy has to be renewed by ordinance rather than a resolution, which is why we're going through this process. There are certain findings that the council needs to make in order to renew that policy. The findings are listed here. Staff believes that those findings can be made because the military equipment that the BPD does deploy is necessary because there is no reasonable alternative to achieve the same objective for officer or public safety. The policy itself safeguards the public welfare in that it describes the purpose and use of each type of equipment, the fiscal impacts of that deployment and use, the standards of use, and the training required. I want to emphasize that the department is not proposing to purchase new equipment, but is only only seeks to continue to deploy the equipment that they currently possess. And over the last year, there were no violations of the policy. So that, if I can get the next slide, please. So that's the conclusion of my report. The chief and I are here for questions if you have them. And the recommended procedure is before you. Thank you.
All right. I'll open it up to any questions. Colleagues? All right, we'll go ahead and open it up to any members of the public who might want to comment on this item. Megan, do we receive anything? All right. I'll go ahead and close public comment on this item. Does anyone have anything they want to say, or does anyone want to make a motion?
Madam Mayor, I think I'm convinced that the 4 findings that are required for renewal have been met. I'm open to any discussions, but if not, I would like to make a motion to determine it, to bring it back for a second reading and adoption.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
I'll give that to Ricardo.
Okay.
Thank you. Or yes, you have a comment?
Could I make a comment on?
Yes, yes, please.
I concur with the motion, the maker of the motion and the second, and simply to add that I suspect that, the history of this kind of legislation is a worry that police forces around the country might become overly military, which then leads to an overly aggressive response in certain cases. And I'm sure there are cities in the United States where that's a very valid concern. I think one of the reasons that we all have a lot more comfort is that our own department and its history of action with people, both victims and also people who might have gotten sideways on something, has never been to overreact, not in any kind of militaristic fashion, and we really appreciate that. So I just wanted to share that additional color. I think we all feel very confident that our department, led by its chief, believe very much in treating people with courtesy and civility, and not, in a heavily armed response and so forth. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion by Vice Mayor Beach, and we have a second by Councilman Ortiz. We have a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Brownrigg?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevenson?
Yes.
Councilmember Ortiz?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Beach?
Yes.
Mayor Coulson?
Yes, thank you very much. Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to item 10B, which is the second reading of an adoption of a resolution establishing a new tobacco retailer application fee and an annual tobacco retailer permit fee for the tobacco retailer permit program and amending the master fee schedule accordingly. I'll turn this back over once again to City Attorney Gina.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So before you tonight is a proposed resolution to introduce two new fees, which coincide with the new tobacco retailer program that the council adopted back in March. At your March 18th meeting, the council adopted a tobacco retailer program that was modeled on the San Mateo County program. That program has a permit structure associated with it, and there are administrative costs that are associated with that. So the fee structure that we are proposing before you tonight is intended to recoup some of the city's costs in administering the program. There are two new fees that we are proposing. One is a one-time new tobacco retailer permit application fee of $249. And that fee would be waived if the applicant submits their application before mid-May. And then the second is a $672 annual fee that will be used to administer the program. That's education and the two enforcement checks that would occur under the program during the course of the year. Again, these fees are commensurate with what the county is charging for its program, so consistent with the council's direction to model our program in line with the county's. That's the conclusion of my report, and I'm available for any questions.
All right, I'll open it up to questions, colleagues. Anyone? Okay, I have one question just really quickly. You said two enforcement checks. Is that per institution, per retailer? Or
Right. So, and Chief can correct me if I'm wrong, but the idea is that we're going to do a minimum, so we'll have a list
Right.
of who the tobacco retailers are. And so we will do a minimum of two enforcement checks
Okay.
During the course
Twice
of
a year.
Yes.
Okay, great. That's only point of clarification. All right, I'm going to open it up right now for members of the public who might want to comment on the item. Come on up. Yes, please.
Thank you. Good evening. Honorable Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. My name is Don Gross, a local business owner of the Burlingame Tobacconist. You may remember me from previous Monday nights. I ask you humbly if I may submit a letter and read this letter for public record.
Please.
Thank you. Dear Honorable Mayor Coulson, Vice Mayor Beach, and Burlingame council members, I'm writing to address the matter of the new Burlingame tobacco retailer permit. As you are aware, in 2023, the San Mateo County Supervisors enacted an ordinance to regulate tobacco retailers in the unincorporated areas of the county. This legislation imposes additional restrictions on tobacco retailers in those regions and enhances penalties for violations, particularly focusing on retailers selling tobacco to minors. While we support the aim of deterring retailers from selling tobacco products to minors, increase penalties, we recognize that it was not the intention of the Burlingame City Council to ban new tobacco retailer permits by enacting the restrictions tailored for unincorporated areas of the county, specifically prohibiting new tobacco retailer permits to be issued to a location within 1,000 feet of a youth-populated area or within 500 feet of an existing tobacco retailer. For instance, my establishment is down the road from Bevmo, which also sells premium cigars, and that's aside from the Walgreens and Safeway going away. So to continue, to better understand the impact of this ordinance on Burlingame tobacconists and our ability to move this business to a new location in order to better serve our customers, we consulted with Police Chief Mike Matucci, who confirmed there isn't a location within the city of Burlingame that meets the requirements of these new restrictions. We value the opportunity to collaborate with you on this matter and kindly request a reconsideration of amending the existing ordinance. We extend our sincere gratitude for your attention and cooperation. And along with this letter, I've included 3 pages of local signatures in Burlingame that are also in support of amending this particular legislation.
Thank you very much,
Very much for
Mr. Gross. Thank you very much. You can hand that to the city clerk. Thank you very much for reading that letter into the record. The issue of the 1,000-foot is something we already sort of decided and reconciled, and we would need to bring an ordinance back, study it and bring it back for an amendment in the future.
That's correct. That would be a future agenda item.
Okay, so I certainly appreciate having this brought to our attention. We mentioned we would. This particular item on the agenda is really regarding the fees and approving the fees. So if we want to go ahead and deal with the fees, then I would also ask, is it your pleasure that you would want to relook at this 1,000-foot limit and work with the chief and work with the city attorney to determine if there was a way to effectively not, I don't think it was our intention to create a ban and to restrict the, I think, almost 18 retailers that we have from being able to move or run or operate their business. But that would be a second item. And we can take it up in future agenda items, or if it's everyone's pleasure, I think we can just direct that now we'd like to do that in the future and go ahead and vote on the ordinance.
I certainly concur with that approach, Madam Mayor. I think the fee itself makes perfect sense. It was a rather shockingly high percentage of retailers that were found in random anonymous surveys to be selling to minors. And so therefore having a permit program that both raises the scale of potential penalties, but also then funds the work to actually monitor and crack down on that, I think makes a lot of sense. And I just want to verify the comment that we can come back with respect to the geographic limitations that the speaker mentioned and that we talked about last time, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, so it's just fees, and I think it makes sense, and I'm in favor of it.
Okay, anyone else?
I
Okay.
echo.
Okay, do we have a motion and then a second, please?
I make a motion to approve the fee structure.
All right.
Do you want a second?
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Councilman Stevenson, a second by Councilman Ortiz. Can we take a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Brownrigg,
Yes.
Councilmember Stevenson,
Yes.
Councilmember Ortiz.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Beach.
Yes.
Mayor Coulson.
Yes. Thank you very much. And thank you, members of the public, for bringing that to our attention. We will put that on a future agenda item.
And Madam Mayor,
Yes.
may I suggest that the speaker be in touch so that we can positively notify the retailers when that's going to come back?
That would be great. Okay. Thank you very much. The next item on our report is a brief staff report on the adoption and resolution of intent to amend the City of Burlingame's master fee schedule. We'll go ahead and turn this over to Director Scott.
Great. Good evening, Mayor, Council Member. Thank you. Tonight is our we are trying to introduce the resolution to introduce the master fee schedule. The city last fee study was conducted in fiscal year 2015-16. In November last year, the city engaged Matrix Consultant Group to perform another study to make sure the city's fee reflect current cost to provide service to our resident and public. Matrix Consultant Group has working very closely with all the department. All the department be contribute to this process to develop a cost allocation plan as the base for our fee calculation. And tonight we have Courtney Remus from the Matrix Consultant Group present the study result to you tonight for consideration. We are recommended to City Council provide some feedback for our draft, the study result, as well as provide some directions how we to bring forward for master fee. For example, some of current fee, we propose 100% cost recovery, and depending on your review the fee and give us some direction on that. And then also set a public hearing for May 6th at 7 o'clock to introduce this fee study for adoption. With that, we'll pass to the Courtney for the presentation for you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening.
Welcome.
Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. I'm here tonight on behalf of Matrix Consulting Group to kind of present the results of the user fee study. Okay. Can you see the presentation?
There's working.
Little technical difficulty. Give us 1 sec.
That's a future agenda item.
I had it and then I deleted it. I'm so sorry. I'm sure it's fascinating. It's really good stuff. I just had too many things in my inbox. All right, guess one.
It's just too much for the computer to handle.
We're waiting. Oh, we're just not getting emails.
So new City Hall and new Wi-Fi. This
Right.
Hearing.
Do you want to introduce yourself
Do you want
to
me
us while we're waiting?
Certainly. My name's Courtney Ramos. I'm a vice president, senior vice president with Matrix Consulting Group.
Okay, and the first name is Ramos?
Courtney.
Courtney Ramos. Okay.
Yes.
Courtney, welcome very much. And you're an SVP. Fantastic.
I'm so sorry. It's just not coming to me.
Do you want to go ahead and?
Here we go.
Oh, got it?
We
Okay,
got it. Okay,
great.
I open it up. Okay. And let me share screen. We are a well-oiled machine here.
Just like we.
Okay. Whew. Got it.
All right. So as I was saying,
Thank you very much.
I'm here tonight to talk about the results of the user fee study that we conducted for the city, give you some high-level background, objectives of why we do a user fee study, talk about the methodology, again, that high-level results overview, and then talk about key outcomes and fee considerations. Because again, what staff has provided, I believe, in conjunction with this, is a proposed fee schedule. And the direction that is needed from you is where and how to set those fees, whether or not to be at full cost recovery or something less than that. So if we go to the next slide. So as we heard previously, the city last conducted a fee study in 2015, 2016. It is a best practice according to GFOA, so the Government Finance Officers Association, to conduct a comprehensive study every 5 to 7 years. This allows us to incorporate changes in staffing, salaries, also process, technology, and certainly code changes, right? So we can get all of that in there. This study looked at all citywide services, except for market-based services. Market-based services would be like facility and field rentals, as well as fire. Fire was not included because it's done by a separate agency. We also conducted a comparative survey because everybody wants to know what your neighbor's charging. So that is also included in the study. We looked at, we took a couple of permits from each department, took a look at those things that have high volume to see how your current fee compares along with your full cost and so forth.
Thank you.
Next slide, please. So the objectives of a user fee study, we start with streamlining the fee structure. We want to take a look at, for each fee schedule that's handed out at the counter, what are the services that we're showing that are being represented? And how do those services actually reflect what's actually being provided? So do we need to change the names of certain things? Are we still charging fees for microfiche? And we don't need those anymore. So really kind of taking a look and cleaning it up so it best reflects the services that were being provided. We want to look at average times that it takes to provide the services that we're providing. So we want to say, whose job is it at certain levels, certain phases of that process? How much time on average does it take? So again, not the most complex, not the simplest, but on average, how much time does it take? We look at calculating fully burdened hourly rates. So we want to account for the salaries and the benefits associated with those staff, as well as citywide or department overhead, as well as their available hours. We might think we're all here 60, 70 hours a week, but we do get holidays and vacation and sick and things like that. So making sure that for that. As I mentioned, we did do a comparative survey just so that we can have that information. It is important to note, though, that survey doesn't tell us the goals and objectives of those other jurisdictions. It doesn't tell us necessarily, what their full cost to provide that service is. It just tells us what they've chosen to charge for that service. So when we look at that information, making sure that we understand it through that lens. Most importantly, with a user fee study, we want to make sure that we have compliance with 218 and 20, which essentially tell us that we can't charge more for a service than it costs us to provide that service. So what this study does is it provides that justification. It says this is the ceiling that we have to charge, and we can't go over that. And then finally, the results of this culminate in an updated master fee schedule, which again is kind of up for debate, for guidance on later on tonight. Next slide. So cost of service is very complicated. It is rate times time equals cost. But there's nuance in that. And so when we look at time, as I mentioned, we want to understand on average. So not the easiest permit you've had to process and not the most complex. We want to know on average, how long should it take you to process this? And this is time on task. It's not, we have a 3-month turnaround time, so it takes us 3 months to do this. But how much time are we actively reviewing? Are we actively inspecting? Are we actively working and going back and forth with an applicant to provide that service? And then for the fully burdened hourly rates, as I said, we have those salaries, those benefits, those services and supplies, that departmental and citywide overhead. And then again, what that does is it gives us the full cost. That's the maximum justifiable fee that can be assessed to projects and applications. Next slide. So that high level overview. If we look at the major departments who are generating revenue, that'd be building, planning, engineering, and police. For all 4 of those departments collectively, there is a current subsidy of about $1 million. And the way that we calculate that subsidy is by looking at the permits processed in the last fiscal year, because we have to take a snapshot in time. And we look at that compared to what you charged and what that full cost is. So for building, we have just under $500,000 deficit at 91% cost recovery. For context, typical cost recovery for building is between 80 and 100%. So doing really well with that, even though we do have that large subsidy amount. For planning, at $145,000 to 84%, again, is really good. We typically see between 50 and 80% cost recovery for planning services. For engineering, it's a little bit at the low end, as we see the range is usually 80 to 100%, and their subsidy is about $278,000. And then police at $102,000, and we would typically see like a high end of 50 or 60% cost recovery for those.
What is police again? What's the normal range of cost recovery for police?
It's between about, I would say between 30 and 50.
Okay, great.
So with that, some of the key outcomes of this study First and foremost, we created square footage fees for commercial MEP projects so that we could be consistent with residential projects. So we wanted to, again, simplify that structure and be consistent in how we did that. So we created the square footage. Currently, the city uses valuation to assess its permits for building. And right now that range, because it's a set of ranges, and it stops at $1 million. There's not a lot that you can build these days for $1 million. And so what we did is we expanded that, because right now what happens is if it's above $1 million, it just kind of exponentially goes up. And so what we did by expanding those ranges helps create that curvature. So it isn't this exponential linear line of an increase. So that'll help reduce that cost of higher projects and make it more in line with actually what it's costing you to provide those services. We developed a city-specific multiplier for valuation-based fees. What that multiplier does is we come in and we say, my B occupancy is 5,000 square feet, and we can use this multiplier then to help us establish the valuation for that. And it helps us take a national table and make it regionally specific. So we helped adjust that modifier. We also streamlined the planning fee schedule so that it's more reflective of the services that are being provided. We created new fees for encroachment permits to reflect the variation in the types of those projects, including capturing large development projects. And then finally, we also created a technology fee. This is something that we're seeing more and more in other jurisdictions. And what the technology fee is meant to do is to capture costs associated with like the permitting system, or if we've got tablets or specialized equipment that we're using for those services. So this fee is meant to capture costs, future costs associated with that. Those funds are then set aside, so they don't just go into buildings revenue or planning's revenue, but they're set aside for the specific purpose of replacing those technology costs. So with all of this information and this discussion and kind of the task before you about how and where to set fees, it's important to understand how to think about those fees. And so we start with kind of fees that are primarily funded, or services that are primarily funded by user fees. So things like zoning and site approvals, building permits and reviews, engineering development reviews. Those things that have more of a singularly specific impact. If I'm a developer, sure, what I develop might benefit the community, but it's also going to benefit me, right? If I put a pool in my backyard, that's really going to benefit me. I mean, yes, it will raise the property value of the houses around me, but I'm the one who's really going to benefit from those services. Then we kind of go down to that middle tier. It's a mixture of user fees, taxes, and other funding sources, things like fire prevention or recreation, things that really do have a mix of benefits that can be either singular or community specific. And then finally, the bottom one, where we primarily are funded by taxes, things like police, fire suppression, streets, landscaping, things of that nature. So when we're looking at how to set our fees, kind of, seeing where those particular services fall within that continuum. Next slide, please. Some other very important things to consider. First and foremost, no fee can be set at more than 100% cost recovery. So any fees showing over that will need to be reduced. And that again is so that we can comply with Prop 218 and 26. I will say, even though we didn't look at market-based fees, that market-based fees are an exception to that rule as laid out in 26. Any state or local ordinance-based fees should remain unchanged, including in future years if you do adopt any CPI or COLA increases to your fees, that those fees should remain unchanged unless the state or the other authorities increase those fees. Obviously, if we set fees less than 100% cost recovery, it means that we're subsidizing through other funding sources. So it's important that we take this proactive, this cognitive action of saying why it is that we're subsidizing those fees, and we do it knowingly that there is a gap that we are creating. And it's also, there are reasons, obviously, I'm all about 100% cost recovery, but there are reasons that we don't do that, and they're very important reasons. One of them is to ensure compliance, right? I want you to come in and I want you to pull that permit because not only does it make you safer, it makes the community safer. And so we want to encourage that behavior, so we set fees lower than the cost of service. The other reason too is that we don't want to create a barrier of entry. We don't want to exclude members of the community from participating in the process. So things like appeal fees are often set lower than the cost of recovery, because again, we don't want to exclude people from participating in that process. And again, it's mostly just important to be cognizant of why it is that we're setting the fees the way that we're setting them, and to make sure that we just don't say, well, this is how we've always done it, so this is how we move forward. Because again, there might be reasons today that we make decisions about subsidizing certain fees that we need to document, so that 5 years from now, 10 years from now, there's a whole new council in front of us, or if all but one of you is still here, that you'll remember why it was that you made those decisions, and be able to say, do we still need, are those reasons still valid? Are they still there?
Thank you. All right. Is that it? Okay. Courtney, thank you very much for that presentation. It was incredibly clear and concise. Do you mind just hanging out until we get through all the questions?
Yeah.
All right. I'll open it up to questions for colleagues. Anyone have any questions about the methodology or?
So I was interested in that cost recovery for police and whether that reflects additional services that are being paid direct. For example, like the police out front of Apple. Are you looking at that? Is that part of that calculation at being at 48%, or is that pretty typical for what you see in terms of recovery? I would have expected it to be more explicit, I guess. I don't.
So it's really only looking at, those types of services, and I would have to defer to police about how those specific services are done, but usually those types of services are a separate agreement that you have with those particular agencies, so it's not covered under the fee schedule. So that would not be included in this.
So the gap doesn't necessarily reflect the fact that there wasn't a revenue source elsewhere.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Vice Mayor or Councilman Brownrigg?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I found the whole report really interesting and surprisingly easy to read, which I didn't expect going into it. But what I was hungering for by the end was the comparative study. So how do we measure up against other cities? And I was just curious. And so, doing exactly what you guys did, taking some spot services and seeing. And what's striking about that is how all over the map cities are with respect to services that you would think would be equally time consuming performed by people who are paid roughly the same amount. And so I found it to be actually a less than helpful tool. And I wondered if there's any sort of macro reason for that, or does it reflect the fact that other cities haven't done their cost recovery? Or I mean, it's really exceptionally diverse.
It really is, and I will have to say I'm not a fan of comparative surveys because it's not apples to apples. It's not even apples to oranges.
I get
Probably
that's
apples to bananas. But some of the reasons that you can see widely varying costs, I'll pick on planning as an example. You might have a permit that can be administratively processed. It doesn't have to go to planning commission or council, right? Takes vastly less time. Another jurisdiction, however, their code and their process might require planning commission and council. So there could be dramatically different numbers, and both of those numbers are accurate and relevant, right? For those costs, but completely different in the service that's being provided. And so just looking at something like conditional use permit here versus conditional use permit here, it's not the same. Additionally, different jurisdictions, and especially here in the Bay Area, staffing is not easy. And so there is a lot of augmentation using contract staff, depending on how long you've had that relationship, depending on how junior or how senior your staff are. Your staffing costs can be vastly different than a neighboring jurisdiction who might be similarly sized, who might be processing the same types of permits. And that can directly impact your cost of service versus somebody else's cost of service, which is, again, why I say, everybody wants to know. We want to see what's on this schedule versus this schedule, but it's really not a true comparison in the way that we'd really like to see a comparison.
It's too bad, and then I'll save any other comments for after the mayor closes. But it felt before I read it like, oh, this is a great way to benchmark ourselves. Are we doing better? Are we doing worse? But you can't really benchmark when the data are all over the place like that. Anyway, thank you.
Okay. Vice Mayor?
Thank you. And thank you for the thorough report. And thanks to staff for getting this going, because it's important to do this. And what are we, 7, 8 years in? So good work. I have one learning I wanted to share in the interest of time and talking with our Parks and Recreation department head. I always gives me pause to see picnic table prices increasing, and just I think it's of interest that there are still plenty of you don't have to pay to play picnic tables in all our parks, and those fees are for the entire day. And you know, that just, what is it, between $100 and $300 depending on the place, but that made me feel good about that. My question is a little bit about our getting a little granular, and I think Mr. Kevin's online, right? Mr. Gardner may be online. Our building permit fees really increased a lot. So $2,000 to the $25,000 range. The base went from $116 to nearly $900. So like that's a big jump. Just help us understand how it's changed that much. Does anybody have any insight on it?
So having not done the previous study, I can't tell you what the basis was. I also, while we know that there is a directive for closer to 100% cost recovery, you know, not knowing what the exact estimates that were used, I can't tell you why it has increased. I will say though that, you know, our processes have significantly changed in the last 7 to 8 years. While we have simplified things with technology, there also have been significant code changes in that time period. I think we've actually maybe had 2 code changes since then. And that can, you know, even though you're looking at the same thing, you might be looking for different things. So some of that could lead to the reason why you would see that jump. Also, not to mention salaries have increased in that time frame. So there are a lot of different factors that would lead to that jump. I would also say, you know, I realize that some of those are increasing, but there are also some in those higher ranges, again, because we expanded the structure, it would actually be reduced.
Appreciate that. I don't know if Mr. Gardner.
Kevin is online.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, I would agree with that. It's, you know, costs of everything has gone up. And, you know, although the fees are based on valuation, and we've kind of done as was described a way to reconcile that. Yeah, the building projects have become more expensive, more complex. Building codes have become more complex. So just the amount of staff time involved in processing building permits of all scales, particularly the larger projects, has gone up, and that's what's reflected in those new estimates.
I think that sounds reasonable. I just hope that the smaller projects, and maybe it'll allude to part of my mindset is probably a comment that I have later. I don't know if Madam Mayor, you want us to do comments after public comment?
Public comment, and then we'll wrap up.
Because there are times where residents need smaller, there's smaller projects that happen. And if we're kind of offsetting those larger projects, we just want to kind of pass the common sense test on some of those as well. And I do appreciate they said it's sort of an opportunity to look like a fresh look at efficiencies, right? It's not just the cost. It's, are we doing things efficient? Can we leverage technology? Is this the common sense way to do something? Or are we adding levels of bureaucracy? Are there new standards we should be thinking about? And I'm going to bring up a very specific example that I've discussed with Mr. Gardner before, but he suggested this would be a good time to bring it up. So for example, this kind of happened in my neighborhood. We have something called a special encroachment permit on here for when people need to replace a fence. Right? And so when people need to replace a fence that's been there for 30 or 40 years, it's the same price for an existing fence versus creating a new one. And there's layers of costs that go in with, you know, are our regulations the modern look in a modern dense society? Is a 6-foot regulation the right regulation compared to an 8-foot fence? So to replace an existing fence that all neighbors are in agreement, you could have a situation where you have to pay $3,200 for an encroachment permit. Then you have to pay an $800 or $900 for a $5,000 fence, a fee. And then you have to have architectural plans drawn up with elevations for $1,000 for a replacement fence. And so I just want us to take a look at some of these things. Does all that level of review need to happen on some of our fees? And I think this is an opportunity for our staff to take a look at some of those instances where maybe we can relook. Thank you. And I appreciate, yeah, that, appreciate we're looking at not just the large, but the small. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions before I sneeze here? Oh, excuse me. No other words? Okay. Great. Then I'm going to go ahead. Courtney, I'll have you stay up for just one more minute, please. Thank you. But are there any members of the public, Megan, who have comments? Okay. Did any members of the public here have any comments they want to make? All right. Then I'm going to have the council wrap it up, but I'm going to keep you up just in case you're such a good presenter that I'm like now leaving you up here stranded. Sorry. Any like wrap up comments anyone wants to provide?
Glad we're doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to say, I like the approach and the thoughtfulness of coming up with these fees. It's not, we don't like to charge the fees, but we do need to recover our costs. So, but thank you for taking the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I appreciate it too. I have to say I came in with the notion that, gee, we already pay a lot for government, and why are we then also charging fees on top of that? Shouldn't that be sort of just part of the service? And in reading your report, I really came to realize, no, there's a distinction between everybody can use the library and you don't want to charge an entrance fee versus, somebody who's going to do a remodel on their home, and that's a lot of work. And it's not a perfect metaphor, but I wound up thinking of it's kind of like a car. So the car, anybody can use the car, but if you want to use the car, you have to put in the gas. You have to pay for the gas. And that seems much more fair to me once I reflected on it. It is a meaningful amount of our income. I mean, it's about $7 million off a $75 million general fund, so not including the enterprise funds, obviously.
Yeah.
So it's a meaningful number, and therefore, cost recovery on the people who are using those services that year it resonated with me at the end of the report. I went in a bit more skeptical probably. That said, I do take the vice mayor's comments that, and in fact, your leading question, which is you're allowed to partially subsidize. And I do think we want to be mindful of not having permit fees that are more expensive than the underlying service.
Yeah.
We want to encourage compliance, right?
Right, exactly. So, but I take it are we having that conversation at a granular level in this particular agenda item?
I think it's more conceptual, but that was recommended to. So, yeah.
I think staff has direction on that. And I believe this has to come to us for another reading. There's going to be more. We're going to have more opportunity.
Hearing.
Yeah. We'll have a public hearing on it. We'll get to hear members of the public. I guess, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I forgot one last.
No problem.
As we saw with the garbage rate hike, where one particular class of service had a very significant percentage jump, which was appropriate. That was the cost of hauling that small bin. But I don't know if we're allowed to, but on some of these big jumps where it's going to become much more expensive, I would like to encourage us to do that in bites, like over a couple of years, depending on what the number is, because I don't know, that just seems more fair to me in some way.
Yeah.
All right, Councilman.
Yeah, one, I appreciate the report. We need to do this more frequently to be in line with one of the takeaways, which is not every 7, 8, 9 years, but closer to 5 to 7. And that makes a lot of sense. And that might address some of the challenge of how much increments you jump. But I always look at kind of rate structures and pricing as informative. They are a signal. Are we appropriate in the rate structure given the nature of the surface? Is there technology, as Vice Mayor Beach said, that can smooth some of these things out? I personally think that most of these services are benefiting a subset of the population, not the entire population, and therefore it's appropriate that our cost recovery is a little bit tighter. And so I would be interested in looking where we could drive efficiency through technology, but at the same time be a little bit more explicit, because that's going to give us information in itself, because people are going to start saying, hey, wait a minute, that just seems unfair. And that might be a great signal to say, okay, let's make sure we figure out a better way to do this.
Okay. I guess my wrap up would be there are certain things that do benefit a homeowner, but are also good for the community. And I will point to electrification as one of those kind of elements. Like it is good to, if you're changing out your gas water heater, to put in a heat pump water heater or to put in an induction cooktop. And so some of what I've heard back from some members of the public working to electrify their homes is that some of the fees and costs associated with that can be prohibitive, and so they might not do that. So that would be another area I would just want to kind of look at.
Part of the incentive.
Yeah, is just there, if you're putting in a gas heater for another gas heater, that's to me one thing. But if you're upgrading your kitchen and your home and making changes and things, whether it's water use, electrification, that are reducing carbon emissions, which are benefiting the community, we might want to be a little more competitive on those kinds of fees. Yes, Councilman Ortiz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I'm taking for what the Vice Mayor said. And so I'm trying to think of what is the direction we're giving? Is the direction we're giving to say that we would subsidize the smaller projects, but not the larger ones? I'm curious how we put that into, what is it we're asking them to do?
I think on certain things that maybe have been flagged before, to take a look at the process and to see, is everything, maybe it's the definition of the encroachment permit, right? It's the definition of how, do all these projects, are they all created equal and they all fall under this category? Or are there certain fees we charge, in the big picture, that maybe need to have a different kind of fee for this flavor of it, or a different kind of fee for this flavor? So looking at this holistically, like you said, it's not just I have no doubt that that's really what it costs to process that kind of a permit. But does this circumstance, where all neighbors are in agreement, require this process? And this is an opportunity as we relook at those things, particularly when we're really looking at the study. And only our staff knows those answers, or only if they bubble up in these instances, to just look at that kind of efficiency too. That's kind of the heart of what I'm asking.
Okay. All right.
Particularly as we're basically raising fees because we need to.
Okay, great. Well, I believe we've taken public comment and we've had everyone provide a little bit of direction. I think this will, we'll come back to this at an evening when we're not quite so late on the agenda and a little fresher, and we'll have an opportunity to take a look at it a little more. This is really almost more of an informational report.
Yeah.
We do have a reso on this? Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
It's to set the public hearing.
Oh, got it. All right, may I please, sorry about that, my fault, I'm moving ahead. Okay, yeah, we do have a resolution. So can I have a motion to adopt a resolution?
So moved.
All right.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Brownrigg, a second by Vice Mayor Beach. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Brownrigg,
Yes.
Councilmember Stevenson,
Yes.
and for the last time, Councilmember Ortiz,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Beach,
Yes.
Yeah.
Colson.
Yes. All right. We have one last agenda item here, which is direction on city council appointee interview process and questions. We have a staff report from the city council. Kind of before we start though, I just wanted to check, and I probably should have done this beforehand, but I know in the past you have recused yourself from voting on one of the candidates at the commission level. I take it you're not going to recuse yourself?
Yeah, and we had another vote and we checked in. with
Okay.
staff, and we checked in with the city attorney.
Okay.
At the time. And yes.
Perfect. Okay, so
And I think other people have had those instances.
yeah, I just think that since that person's coming back, I just wanted to make sure, because if you wanted to recuse yourself, I think this would be the time. So that's all I wanted to clarify. Okay, I'll turn this over to City Manager Goldman.
Great. I'm going to go real fast here because we've been here a little while. So our friend, as we all heard earlier tonight, is retiring after this meeting, which could be in about 20 minutes. So the deadline for applications was Friday at 5. This report was published the day before, so we didn't know how many candidates we had at the time or what was going on. We have 2 candidates. You will be interviewing those 2 candidates on April 17th, which is next Wednesday at 6 p.m. Sorry, it's this coming Wednesday at 6 p.m. Right here in the council chambers. So we just wanted to refresh your memories for those who are here or those who weren't here, give you the information about what happened when Councilmember Jerry Deal stepped down. We had a similar application and interview process. There were a whole lot more candidates because it was citywide back then, not by district. But we did have candidates apply. They went through the whole interview. So we had the council members provided interview questions to me. And then I went through those questions and I selected at least 1 question per council member so that there wouldn't be overlap, because sometimes people come up with the same brilliant ideas. So we want to make sure everybody gets at least 1 new idea out there. And then there's probably time for at least 2 questions per council member. And then you all were able to ask follow-up questions as needed. Actually, I'm just going to look at you all. The rest of you weren't here. We're able to ask follow-up questions as needed. So I'm recommending that you follow a similar approach if that's what you think is a good idea, especially since these interviews are in less than 48 hours. So not everybody has to submit questions, but if you do want to submit questions, I suggest you do that by close of business tomorrow. No extensions, close of business tomorrow, because I will need some time. I'll work with my friend, the city attorney and the city clerk, to make sure we've got a good balance of questions. And then what we'll do is we'll provide those to you at the beginning of the meeting on the 17th. We're going to send the candidates out of the room so they don't get a preview of the questions. So they'll go hang out in conference room A. You guys, as you do when you do the commissioner interviews, you can discuss the questions, say, you know, I want to do this one. I don't like the way that's worded, whatever. Be kind to each other. And then we'll have the candidates in conference room A. We'll bring them in 1 at a time. They'll do an interview. So whoever goes first can then sit in the room if you want during the second. That's what we did the last time around, but the second candidate won't be in the room while the first candidate's answering questions. We hope they will be respectful and not watch online, because that is an option, but that's shouldn't happen. And then we are providing you an option to vote that evening if you want to. We weren't sure when we went through this whole thing a couple weeks ago and figured out when the interviews would happen and whatnot, how many candidates we were going to have. If you had, 8 candidates, that's harder to make a decision. Yeah. With 2 candidates, maybe you'll be ready, maybe you won't. If you're not ready, that's okay. We'll come back. We thought maybe we'd do it just before the study session on May 6th so that the person who gets seated can get sworn in and participate on May 6th in the council meeting. So that is where we are. Happy to take any questions or see if that sounds good to you all, if you want to change the process at all. And that is the end of my staff report.
How long are we proposing each interview be?
I think they should go longer than 30 minutes.
Yeah, I think that's about right. So
Yeah, I think, much longer than that, it's kind of rough on everybody. And I don't, obviously we won't hold hard and fast to that. If there's a lot of follow-up questions that you have and you want to get more intel out of these folks, then by all means, but I don't think we should plan on an hour for each person. That's entirely too much, in my opinion.
I think that makes sense. Peter?
Just curious, what's the level of commitment if they've submitted an application and we do the vote is there a hard commitment that between the interviews decision and May 6th that there's no going back? Because otherwise we've already told somebody that.
No, it's a vote.
I mean, we'll have voted on it, so presumably they're committed and they want to serve.
Okay.
Yeah.
If
I
they
think
get
if they
voted,
submitted,
say they don't want to serve, then that would be a little awkward.
yeah, no, I think we have to assume everyone who's submitted application is, I think staff has, we've previewed most of these people. I think some of them have attended many of our meetings. They've been, are pretty well aware, I think, of the commitment. But it is a good question because it definitely, I think if we had it has happened
Correct.
on the planning commission, I'll just say, where people have applied and then right before the interviews, they've decided not to interview anymore. And I think we had that happen with Palacio. And, we wouldn't open up or anything. It's just like, but I think we've vetted it. People know what their commitment is. Yeah.
Sorry, have we received the applications?
Yes.
You did.
Okay.
They should be in your inbox.
I'm sure they are.
Yeah, they're there. Okay, so would it be let me open it up to members of the public right now really quick to see if any members of the public have comments on the process, the procedure. Okay, we'll go ahead and close public comment and we can direct staff would it be everyone's pleasure to please submit a couple questions and I would encourage people maybe that if you have an area of expertise, like Emily, if you're working on transit and things and that's something really important to you, certainly craft your questions to areas that maybe like I wouldn't be as familiar on something you're working on. I think people should feel free to do that. The only questions, when I was looking over some of the questions from the past, a couple of questions stood out to me as almost a little unproductive. They were like backward looking sort of, kind of what's the most controversial thing that you think has happened and, would you have sided with this group or that group? And to me, those don't feel super productive and they're not helpful. They're not going to tell us anything about it. You put that person in a position where they're already kind of in a divisive situation. So I would just suggest that people kind of look at really forward-looking questions. We've had people come in today to talk about all kinds of things, from labor issues to transit to fees to everything. There's, I think, a myriad of questions people could ask. And then Lisa, City Manager Goldman had suggested that one last question was something to the effect of, as opposed to reiterating all the questions on the application, because we have those answers and the public can certainly read those answers and so can we, and we have a limited time to ask other questions that weren't answered, but leave room at the end for a question that, say, for example, said, I'm unclear on your answer to question 3. Could you elaborate about that a little more? Would that be everyone's pleasure as well? So when she's developing the question, she has a little guidance. Yes, Ricardo?
The one thing that I'm leaving District 1 and I'm hoping that the people who are applying are interested in what's going on in the district. So I would hope that there's some questions that are specific to the district and what's the priorities for that for District 1.
I think where we've talked to, at least I've talked to City Manager Goldman about this, is you have a lot of very particular commissions and things that you've sat on, like CCAG and the Airport Roundtable, and we talked about the noise and all those things, and those seem to be very germane to your district. So if you have anything specific that you might want to recommend, I think if it's everybody's pleasure, it would be my honor to take any questions that Councilman Ortiz would suggest as well, even though I know he's leaving the council. Is that okay, City Manager?
When's my email getting shut off?
You got 20 minutes.
We're gonna give you until
Thanks,
Friday or so. So please, if you have some questions that you'd like to submit, I think that would be fully appropriate.
Can I just recommend that submit them, put them in your priority order. Don't just freelance it and then, get upset that I didn't choose one of your top 2. I might not choose your top 1 if somebody else's top 1 is virtually the same, but at least prioritize so I can try to get to the top questions from everybody.
And I think we'll also give you editorial liberty if there are 2 questions that are very similar to meld those.
I might combine them and, me with the grammar.
Yeah, I know. Punctuation and grammar will be perfect.
Commas, all of that good stuff.
And then we're thinking, how many questions would you all like to about have? 5, 4?
Total?
Yeah.
Talking about each.
No, total.
I think you can probably have more than 5.
I do.
Okay,
Yeah, I think 8 questions with which
a re-
allows you time to go, can you just give me a little more info on?
yeah, on the end.
And then you would, introduce it and then you would do the wrap.
Okay,
as-
yes.
And Madam Mayor,
Madam Vice
if
Mayor.
you're facilitating, it might be great if you kind of manage the expectations, like we don't need 10-minute answer.
Right.
You know, about 3 or 4 minutes a question and keep it going.
I appreciate that. And I would actually lean on colleagues to feel free to kick me under the table or poke me with a pen if they feel like something is going, a little bit too long. And I will certainly, and Madam City Clerk, will you be here that night? So you can help us with. Oh, there we go. Like try to keep question, I'd like to, I think that puts a lot of added pressure on people, but maybe you could keep your own little dinger over there. And if things start going, we have a tendency, we can do it too. Like, oh, explain on that, elaborate on this. Just keep us all in line. We'll appreciate it. And thank you for that suggestion, Vice Mayor. I think it's really good. And I'm delighted we're all going to be participating. Any other comments or ideas or thoughts? This is going to be a really important meeting. We're, again, really going to miss you, Ricardo. And we'll, I hope you watch maybe.
Oh, I will.
Okay. You're welcome here. We'd love to have you.
In my pajamas.
In your pajamas at home. Okay. Thank you. So I think.
And close the business tomorrow. So by 5 p.m. tomorrow, please send your questions in. Thank you.
Mhm. Okay, I think I've already sent mine in. I'll think of more. Perfect. Do we have any item? I'll go ahead and.
Is this, sorry, quick question. Is this going to be recorded and zoomed and all that?
All that good stuff.
Yeah.
But it's clear that members of the public do not have comment rights, or they do?
Yeah, we'll have public.
Send an email in. They can't speak over Zoom. So
Yeah.
if they're at home, they can email. If they're here, they can come in and talk, but they can't talk over Zoom.
So I think the way to do that is we'll run the questions through. We'll have our little break, our little, any more questions. Everybody's good here. We'll open it up to members of the public. Members of the public can make comments or, ask questions, whatever they have. We'll shut public comment. And then if anyone on this dais has any additional, something they want to just clarify or whatever in a quick clarification, I think that would be appropriate. Because you can imagine like somebody comes in and says, Michael Brownrigg is, lying about everything he said today. And I think we shouldn't vote him in.
All the time.
Happens all the time. Or Michael Brownrigg is of a persuasion or a gender or whatever. And I want to make sure that if there is something that's inappropriate like that, we A, cut it off, and B, we allow the respondent, time to, or the applicant time to maybe respond to some particular question or something that maybe somebody brought up. Is that okay or fair to everyone?
Makes perfect sense. And, when you'll take the pulse of the room, Madam Mayor, but if there, and I don't expect this, but if there happen to be a lot of people, let's keep comment to like.
1 minute, 100%. Or they can just, send it in.
Yeah.
If anyone really wants to make a comment, I would suggest you send it in advance. That's actually probably the most efficient way. And I think a few people have, so.
Is
Mhm.
is there public comment on non-agenda items, or they can only do public comment on the specific aspect of appointing somebody to the council?
So the Brown Act says, so the Wednesday meeting is going to be a special meeting of the city council.
But it's agendized.
It is agendized, but it is a special meeting
Yeah.
because your regular meetings are the first and third Mondays of every month. So the Brown Act provides that the public comment section is only for items that are on the agenda. And then certainly, as to the appointment process or the appointment question, right, that the mayor will want to keep them on the topic, which is the appointment, the
Well,
consideration.
That's why I'm going.
Yeah.
So like if they just start commenting on something other than
Right.
what's on the agenda.
Yeah, we'll rein that.
Right.
I think we'll be fine.
Exactly.
Yeah. This shouldn't be too controversial. Okay. So with that, I'm going to move on to the next item, which is, does anyone have any council committee or activities, reports, or announcements that they are fully compelled to discuss right now? No one? Yep, anyone? Okay. I thought Ricardo might give us a 10-minute thing. So other than the future agenda item we spoke about this morning, which is the,
Here we go. I have a few things.
that's what I was worried about. Does anyone else have any future agenda items? Yes, Vice Mayor Beach.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No, I appreciate the comments of Ms. Lind and Mr. Medina, who came in tonight about the wage theft on our public parking garage. You know, we're not the enforcement body for wage theft, but I would be interested in having a study session, if it's the pleasure of the council, to see what local policy levers we could explore to promote payment of unpaid wages in wage theft situations or consequences for wage theft violators. There are cities that are doing some local work, and I think it would be worth exploring that since we've had that incident on a public project.
Anyone else?
I would
Mhm.
welcome that
Okay.
conversation.
Anyone else? I might add on to that, Ms. Lind mentioned this evening that there will be a new agency that's being formed, and I would like to maybe understand a little bit about that as well. So, you know, what we can do, what's being done, and how it all works together.
Be very helpful.
I apologize. We have a super busy schedule between now and July 4th, so it might be after the end of the summer if it were okay. I just don't want you to feel like we're not prioritizing it. We will certainly get it done before the end of the year.
Yeah,
That-
thank you, Madam Mayor, because we do have some big projects coming up that are public projects. And
Yeah,
yeah, it's good for us to be thinking about that before we go out to bid.
of course, it'd be my pleasure. At that, any acknowledgements that anyone has? Nope. Nope. Peter, I might, under acknowledgements, just ask you in the second meeting of May before the June event that you're planning, since it kind of falls under acknowledgements, if you would have a little something to
You want-
say, not right now,
Okay.
but in a couple meetings, just want to put that right now while I'm thinking about it. All right, if there are no more, there's nothing else, we'll just go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you all very much. And thank you to our labor friends for staying so late. We know you have children at home and